Good evening, friends. I'm Satish Goyal, your host for the day. And we have with us CA Lokesh Gupta, CA Manmohan Khemka ji, the honorable speakers for the day, Jagjit Singh, our regional council member, and Rohit Bajaj. And warm welcome to all the participants. Before we start our seminar, Jagjit, please have our CA motto song played.
Yeah, please.
Yashasupteshu jagrati Yashasupteshu jagrati Kamam 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 Pursho nirvimana Tadeva shuklam Tada brahma Tadeva amritamucchate Tasmin lokaha shataha Sarve tanuna kashjana Etadvaita
Thank you. Manmohan ji ka request is neither audible. So now check Manmohan ji.
Manmohan sir, can you hear us? I think sir के पास voice नहीं जा रही sir.
Sir, actually I'm trying to call him. ये कुछ अगर technical issue हो तो मैं check कर लूँ, but he is not picking my call though. Let's see अगर वो call करते हैं तो मैं थोड़ा सा technical help कर दूँगा फिर. बस बात हो रही है.
हाँ. अच्छा आ गई पर हाँ पर मुझे तो नहीं आ रही
आपकी वॉइस आ रही है सर खेमका सर.
हाँ
आपकी वॉइस आ रही है. नाउ इट्स कमिंग.
अब आपको आ रही है सर? एक बार फोन.
हाँ मुझे भी आ रही है.
राइट सर.
राइट.
Sorry for the interruptions, members. We have two dignitaries with us. One is CA Lokesh Gupta, one is CA Manmohan Khemka ji. Let me introduce Lokesh ji. He is besides CA, he has done Chartered Accountancy course. He has also done LLB from Delhi University in 2001, DISA and Forensic Audit and Fraud Detection from our institute. A resident of Vivek Vihar and partner Sma Gupta and Company. He has conducted bank branch audit for banks for more than last 20 years. Concurrent audit, stock audit, internal audit of bank, both in public and private space with experience of more than 16 years. Also conducted specialized units of banks such as currency chest and outsource area in banks such as agencies involved in refilling of ATMs, including audit of ATMs itself. He is a speaker on statutory audit and concurrent audit of bank branches at a large number of seminars organized by our branches and study circles. He is also a speaker on FEMA, FCRA, international tax and other areas relating to Forex in various seminars. He has provided training to bank staff on operational areas, including Forex, on a number of occasions. He has contributed as a member of group on certification course on concurrent audit of banks under IASB. Contributed as member of group for revision of manual of statutory audit of banks for the year 2021 under AASB. Presently faculty for certification course on concurrent audit of banks with our institute. Contributed as a member of group formed to prepare a minimum audit checklist for concurrent audit of banks and revision of Ghosh and Jilani committee under PDC. He has conducted statutory and internal audit of large number of units in both public and private space. and also providing consultancy, especially for FEMA and international tax to large number of clients, including listed companies and foreign companies. Friends, we have CA Manmohan Khemka ji with us. I request Jagjit Singh to kindly introduce Manmohan ji to the house.
Thank you, Satish ji. And first of all, a very warm good evening to all the present member, our dignity, the best speaker of our profession, very senior, Lokesh Gupta sir and Manmohan Khemka sir. So it's again, I would say, a great opportunity for us to listen something about, about this bank branch audit. And we have a very senior, both the faculties member speakers. So it's again a good opportunity for me to introduce Manmohan Khemka sir. So if I say about the Manmohan Khemka sir, we know that सर को किसी इंट्रोडक्शन की जरूरत नहीं है, ऑलरेडी सभी मेंबर्स जानते हैं खेमका सर को, बट लेट्स फिर भी बिकॉज खेमका सर हैविंग a great achievement from his life. So Khemka sir is a fellow chartered accountant, practicing chartered accountant, 25 years experience in the practice, and he's working as senior partner in Sma Company, a chartered accountant. If I talk about the qualification part, he's a LLB, he's a business valuation. He has done the business valuation course, FAFD from the institute, CAT from the institute, NCFM from the National Stock Exchange, and the PGD and Vastu from the Shri Lal Bahadur Shastri Rashtriya Sanskriti Vidyapeeth se. And if I talk about the contribution towards the profession, so has done a great job by Khemka sir. He's a visiting faculty for the GST with the Indirect Tax Committee of our institute, visiting faculty for the issues related to economics, finance, and taxation on the various professional as well as the social or the corporate platforms. He has delivered more than 400 lectures as a visiting faculty, and he was the co-opted member of the Indirect Tax Committee, and at present, yes, of course, sir, giving his contribution to the profession. Co-opted member of the Information Technology and Technical Observer of the Master in the Business Finance MBF, that was for 2 years, and the Technical Observer for the certification course of Business Valuation. So if I talk about the other contribution, like towards the society at large, so sir still is doing a great job for the society. He's working as a president for the CA Vichar Manch at NGO for the welfare and the voice of CA and other tax and finance professionals. Second part, the patron trustee of Shri Agrasen International Hospital, and trustee for the Balaji Nirog Dham, and he is working as a chairman of the Indirect Tax Committee of the All India Chartered Accountants Society, also trustee for the Agarwal Parivar Shakti, and founder executive member of the Society for the Tax Analysis and Research, that is STAR, and General Secretary Bharatiya Vita Salakar Samiti, that was in 2016, and founder of the West Delhi Study Circle of ICI, founder for the Kurul Bagh Western City Study Circle of ICI, and of course, apart from this, the activities of the CA Vichar Manch, which is the great contribution from Manmohan Khemka sir. So in the Vichar CA Manch, he is working for the educational program, for the publication in the field of company law, audit, assurance, and tax ready reckoner. And he is running one expert opinion, that platform for solving the query of the members. So that is www.expertopinion.org, and Siksha Sahayata Chikitsalaya Legal Aid Cell to the Chartered Accountant Mentor Successor Program, and so many other things. So if I will complete the whole the introduction of CA Manmohan Khemka sir, so it will take another session. So directly, so first of all, the thank you to Manmohan Khemka sir, and of course CA Lokesh Gupta ji for giving your precious time in this webinar. So after a long time, this is the first one, I would say, after a long time webinar at the platform of Shastrinagar CP Study Circle. So, and of course, apart from this, I would like to thanks to all the members, jinki blessing ki wajah se I have reached to this NIRC level. So thank you, Satish ji. Thank you, Khemka sir, Rohit bhai, Lokesh Gupta sir, and all the present member. Over to Satish ji. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jagjit. Yes, you rightly said, we did our last seminar in the month of December, and we didn't do any seminars during Jan, Feb, March, knowing that all members were busy in their professional duties, responsibilities. So without wasting much time, we have already received branches from different banks. जिसकी भी जो branch जो bank हम लोग सब कर रहे हैं. And few of us have already reached the branches. Few of us will be reaching in a day or two. And to know the recent changes, the latest so many changes in IRAC norms and all other changes in bank audits, plus the practical approach, we have senior members CA Lokesh Gupta and Manmohan Khemka ji. So without wasting much time, I'm handing over the mic to Lokesh ji and Manmohan ji. Please, sir, start your deliberations so that our members gets enriched by your exposures and by your sharings. Lokesh ji.
Thank you, Satish ji, and thank you, Jagjeet ji, for a nice introduction. And I welcome Manmohan ji. So, Manmohan ji, कैसे करना चाहते हैं आप? मतलब किस तरीके से करें इसको?
थैंक यू वेरी मच लोकेश जी। और मैं सबसे पहले तो बहुत कॉन्ग्रेचुलेशंस देना चाहता हूं जगजीत जी को फॉर हिज न्यू एलिवेशन टू नॉर्दर्न इंडिया रीजनल काउंसिल ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स ऑफ इंडिया। और जगजीत जी को हम सभी की तरफ से बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं, बहुत बहुत बधाई। सतीश जी का बड़ा अहम रोल रहा है जगजीत जी को इस एलिवेशन तक पहुंचाने में। मैं सतीश जी को भी मुबारकबाद देता हूं और सभी इनके मित्रों को मुबारकबाद देता हूं। Before we start the bank audit proceedings, and I will request Lokesh ji to lead us to the IRAC norms and prudential norms. But before that, why we are giving so much stress on due compliance, due observations of the standards on auditing, due verification aspects, particularly more and more in bank branch audit. Abhi recently, I have received a latest communication from Regional Directorate Northern to the Registrar of Companies. And that communication is about seeking permission for filing a formal professional misconduct complaint against some chartered accountants and company secretary, and that is the official document. And maybe about more than 20, in the case of more than 20 companies and about 30 to 40 chartered accountants and company secretaries, the regional directorate has sought the permission.
Permission
On the
from?
other hand, permission for filing.
No, permission from?
From registrar of companies.
Okay.
And the permission obviously maybe for lack of observance of compliance norms or lack of disclosure requirements, whatever may be. On the other hand, the government of India has just now passed the CA/CS CMA amendment bill in Lok Sabha, and there is huge debate going on the role of chartered accountants in adherence to the regulations, adherence to the quality standards, adherence to the disclosure and reporting requirements. And again, a challenge is coming from the government side, from the central regulators like RBI, SEBI, economic offense wings, and other investigating agencies. And the fingers have been raised by these agencies on the conduct of the chartered accountant. On the other hand, we chartered accountant feel a little bit out of place and getting a communication gap to get communicated our place or our thinking that what exactly the audit is, what exactly the investigation is, what exactly the vigilance is. And audit is not an investigation, but then there are definitely some gap, and there are either some communications and identity of understanding gap and some expectations gaps also, and some lack in professional due discharge of the duties also. The combination pool of all these can only resolve the situations. Otherwise, जैसा हम देख रहे हैं, we are being either downsized by the regulators. अभी जैसे 90% तक एडवांसेस को कवर करने के लिए ऑडिट था पिछले साल तक. This time bankers demanded for the 70% coverage, but the ultimately RBI allowed for the 80% coverage. Now two things happen simultaneously in this financial year. कुछ तो banks merge हो गए and total nationalized banks, total PSU banks अब रह गए हैं 12. कुछ branches कम हो गई otherwise also, and then 10% of the branches or the business is been cut by this provision कि 80% तक की ही branches होनी है. So until and unless हम अपने आप को रेलिवेंट बना करके रखेंगे और वो रेलिवेंस हमारे वर्ड से, हमारी रिपोर्ट से, हमारे जेस्चर से कम्युनिकेट होगी, तब तक हम अपने ऑडिट फंक्शन की गरिमा और मर्यादा को मेंटेन नहीं कर पाएंगे और इस तरीके के एलिगेशंस हम पर आते रहेंगे. तो दिस इज इन दिस हार्ड टाइम्स, दिस इज वन ऑफ द अपॉर्चुनिटी जब आप अपनी इंडिपेंडेंस को एग्जिबिट कर सकते हैं पब्लिक एट लार्ज में. तो
sir, as suggested while we were talking in the yesterday, as suggested, we'll definitely have one session on this amendments and all other impacts as you suggested.
Yeah,
however, whatever you want to communicate, please do.
Yeah. So सभी लोग, मेरी सभी से ये रिक्वेस्ट है और सभी से ये बैंक ऑडिट फंक्शन को डिस्चार्ज करें, प्रॉपर पूरी ड्यू डिलिजेंस से करें, प्रॉपर करें और प्रॉपर रिसोर्सेज को अपने डिप्लॉय करें और फुल फ्री एंड इंडिपेंडेंट रिपोर्टिंग अपनी करें. और हमारे बीच में लोकेश जी हैं जो हमें टेक्निकल प्रोविजंस पे बड़े अच्छे से गाइड करते रहे हैं और करते आज भी करेंगे. एंड देन आई विल आल्सो शेयर some of my practical experiences, and wherever the need would be I would be supplementing Lokesh ji जहां जहां भी कहीं जरूरत होगी. And otherwise at the end I would be giving you some case studies how to do the audit and how to find out the gaps between the files. So with this I request Lokesh ji to please take us to the bank branch audit provisions. Lokesh ji, please.
Thank you, Manmohan ji. And actually very well said, because this is an issue which keeps on cropping up time and again. And whenever we do seminars also, a lot of time people tell us कि sir audit किया, MOC भी निकला और उसके बाद कहीं ना कहीं प्रेशर आता है हमारे ऊपर कि हम वो उसको MOC को ड्रॉप कर दें. There's a lot of pressure, and it is true also. There is a lot of pressure upon members not to report whatever findings are there. But somehow जो मनमोहन जी ने कहा, मैं उस बात को बिल्कुल एग्री करता हूँ कि ultimately it is not only the bank which is looking at it, it is also the regulator which is looking at our reports, trying to find out the value addition which our work is giving to them. And if that value addition is not coming throughout our reports, then somehow the question of credibility starts to rise, which is absolutely not happening for a profession like chartered accountants, which are so highly qualified and we are so hard working also. It is not that we don't work hard, we have worked very hard, better than most of the professions. But somehow because of that pressure, we are not able to reflect the correct position to the regulator, which we need to take care. Now with these words, sir, we will start off with our bank audit seminar.
एक इसमें सर supplement करना चाहूंगा.
हाँ जी सर.
As you said, we work hard and we are able to find out the gap and lapses, but because of pressures, if we do not report, then it is presumed that we could not find the gaps.
True.
We could not find the issues wherein either sanctions were wrong or NPAs are not reported, which ultimately is a result of all those things into present scenario. So we should avoid until and unless problems is resolved, like NPA, say for example, NPA is because of non-submission of stock statement, then either the stock statements are not received. Until unless they are not received with the bank, we should never drop it. If it is for recovery, we should not consider recovery after 31st March. However, if there is a small amount, we can consider, but without receiving the entire overdues over all the credit facilities of the group of the borrower, we should not consider. So whatever with the hard work we could find out, we should always report. Otherwise, people or even the bankers at the back end, front में तो वो बहुत जो भी जी उजूरी करते हैं, but at the back of our of all the chartered accountants, what they do report is that उनको कुछ आता नहीं है या वो कुछ करते नहीं है, देखो जी हमारी तो clean report है. So clean report for them is a good signal for them, but it is a bad signal for us. So over to Lokesh ji, so that we do another hard work and do not leave under pressure. Except exceptions are always there कि अगर कोई genuine अगर उसकी shortcomings दूर हो जाते हैं तो we can always think of leaving.
So Satish ji ने जैसा कहा, so it is not that we have an intention to somehow give a bad report to the branch. We will have to only state the facts only.
Yes,
But
yes.
if the facts are something which requires us to report in our audit report or to provide a MOC, we should not shy away from it. मुझे किसी ने कहा सर मैंने क्यों ये बात छेड़ी सर, किसी ने मेरे को कहा कि सर हम पे बहुत ज्यादा प्रेशर आता है. मैं कहा सर कहीं ना कहीं we need to look inward, because if 100 auditors are doing the work, if 50 or even 60 are providing MOC, then the pressure would disappear. It is only because somehow for one reason or another only few are doing MOCs, the pressure starts to build upon those few issues. So we don't have to worry, and then we have leaders like Manmohan ji here. In case we find any difficulty, we can always contact people like Manmohan ji, Jagjeet ji, and they can actually help us in case we find there is some kind of undue pressure which has been created. Of course, we have to take a stand. The leaders can only come, somebody can only support once we take a stand. If we themselves are not taking stand, then nobody can support. Right?
भगवान भी नहीं मदद करता सर उनके लिए.
बिल्कुल. Ultimately, you have to take a stand.
Yes, and I'll also share in between wherever required.
Right. Okay. So, sir, we'll start off with the technical part. Sir, एक बार screen sharing मेरे को allow कर दीजिए.
Please, sir.
So, in the meantime, so when we talk about a branch statutory audit, sir, मैं दो तीन issues जरूर share करना चाहूँगा, because I always so I always feel it is important for not only to for us to understand the technical provisions of it, but also to understand कि हमें क्या-क्या activities करनी है, so that we are able to complete our work in the shortest possible time. Satish ji, ये दिख रहा है क्या?
Yes, sir.
Right. So I think the first thing which we need to do, I'm sure everybody of us would have received the letter. So the first thing which we need to do is to communicate with the previous auditor. I think that's a very important activity. Sometimes we ignore it. We should not. One. Now it is much easier also. You have to just send an email. I make it a point to not only send an email, I also make it a point to always call the previous auditor. Try and understand what kind of issues he faced in the branch. I'm even doing an audit right now, sir. I have not even visited the branch. I have not seen the face of the branch manager, but we have already communicated with the previous auditor, understood from him what kind of a branch it was, what kind of issues he faced. And the good thing, sir, is that he can give you practical tips about what kind of, say, I am traveling to a very interior place in Tamil Nadu somewhere for doing an audit. So he gave me a practical idea where you can stay and how you can actually travel to the branch. He even told me that you will, in case you are a vegetarian, you will not find food at the branch, so you might as well carry a lunch box along with you. So these are very practical tips which would help you in understanding how your audit needs to go ahead. Secondly, I think very important is because everybody talks about lack of time when it comes to statutory audit. Of course, I cannot increase time for you. Even I have received a letter which says that you have to start by 7th and complete by 15th. But I can tell you two things here. One is that I have been the one of those inefficient auditors, I can say, who have never been able to complete within the stipulated time given by the bank. And heavens have not fallen, sir. So this is one I can say. Heavens have not fallen because I have not been able to complete within the timelines which the branch has told us, which the bank has told us. So the only thing is we need to be diligent. We need to do our work as soon as possible. I am not asking you to delay the work, but in case your audit demands or you feel that you require more time, you have every right to continue doing the audit beyond the stipulated timelines. Nobody can tell you to complete the audit, somehow complete the audit within a specified timelines, because audit is not an activity which is something which is a standard activity. So things change while you do an audit. So you have every right to continue the audit beyond that day. Secondly, what you can always do is, if I ask you when do you plan to start the audit, so a lot of people would say that the closing returns are not ready, so we'll start off with the audit once the closing returns are ready. I tell people that you can start off with the audit the day you have received the letters, and practically we do that also, sir. I can even show you an email which has come very today itself, and we have issued them a letter saying that these are the requirements and these you please send us immediately on email. So most of the banks do comply. So what do we ask them to give us? One is, sir, of course, we ask to give them all the audit reports which they have done. So bank have a lot of audits. We are not the only auditors, and whether the other auditors have more time than which is allocated to us. So they have an internal audit, they have a concrete audit, they have, then there might be a revenue audit or IS audit, or there are many other audits. There might be a RBI inspection which might have been done. So please try and obtain all the audit reports. Why it is important? One, we have to report upon that. So in any case, why waste time sitting in the branch and then going through the audit reports? Then better. The second reason is that it gives you an idea about what kind of activities the branch is doing. So you know the first starting point for any audit is to know your auditing. So going through these audit reports help you in understanding your auditing, what kind of activities they are doing, then what kind of shortcomings have been observed in various audits. So they have a very, very important aspect as far as audit is concerned. One, it is important for your LFER purpose. And secondly, some audit points would definitely have an impact on your financial audit also. So may be important from your main statutory audit point of view also. So that is important. Then secondly, I ask them because again, coming back to a statutory branch audit, it is not only about audit of advances. Audit of advances, of course, is one of the critical areas of a branch statutory audit, but it is not only about audit of advances. So you are basically certifying a balance sheet and a profit and loss account. So you are also responsible for the trueness and fairness of those financial statements. So what we have been doing is, in any case, in any audit, what we do is we do some kind of a variance analysis by comparing the current year figure with the previous year figures to understand for any variances, which we need to basically check and report upon. So similarly, in case of a bank, what we do is that we compare the current year balance sheet with the previous year balance sheet. We also ask them to give a quarterly balance sheet and P&L, which because most of the banks have they are listed entities and they require to give a audited quarterly accounts they have to finalize. So we take those also, try and analyze those. We do a analysis and then try and understand for any variations which we need to verify when we visit the branch. So this is the second activity which I feel you should do. And third being most important being, so I'll take a little more time to explain you the requirement of the third need. So there was a circular which came last year, September 14, 2027. It was in relation to automation of some processes in banks. And the timelines which was given by the RBI to implement this process was June 30, 2021. And all the banks have given a undertaking to the RBI that they have actually completed this automation exercise. Okay, so this is the first year when we will be doing the audit where the banks have confirmed to RBI that this automation has been done. What is the automation all about? So they say the system should handle both downgrade and upgrade of accounts through a straight-through process, STP, without manual intervention. Okay, and what else? Calculation of provision, income recognition, derecognition shall be system driven. So they are saying that the system itself would decide what accounts need to be classified as an NPA, what accounts needs to upgrade it from an NPA to a standard category, what is the provision requirement, what is the income recognition, what is the income derecognition which is required. Now, if the system is able to do it very well, if the system is not able to do it, then it is a concern for us. So the first thing which we need to do this time when we go for a bank statutory audit is we need to test this system whether the internal control system of the bank is classifying accounts, downgrading and upgrading the accounts, making provision, income recognition, derecognition correct. If it is not so, first thing is you need to qualify your internal financial report which comes now. So you have to give a report on IFO-CR basically on financial controls on it, basically the financial reporting. There you need to bring out that the system is not actually RBI is banking upon this system. So they feel that if working perfectly, then there is no requirement of a statutory because the system itself would be able to identify NPAs. So they feel this is one can actually reduce the requirement of having a branch statutory audit. So we need to test this system whether this system is actually functioning fully or not. Secondly, they said that the exceptions may be granted in certain circumstances which are expected to be minimum and temporary. Manual override to have at least two-level authorization and preferably from a centralized location. So they said the system would do it. In case the bank feels a need to do a manual intervention, they can do it in exceptional cases. And this would require a maker and a checker, and preferably it should be done from a centralized location. And such manual overrides shall have audit trails and subjected to audit by concurrent statutory auditors. This is very critical, sir. And one of the activities which everybody of us would have to perform this time when we go for a statutory branch audit is that whatever manual overrides the branch has done, we need to verify, we need to take a list from the branch, we need to take a management representation of this manual overrides because the system itself should generate an audit trail for it, and these audit trails are subject to audit by a concurrent statutory auditors. So very important, because why? Maybe the system has classified one account as an NPA and the branch has manually intervened and classified that account as a standard. So it becomes very critical for us to understand that why the branch intervened, whether the reason was genuine, whether the reason was not genuine. So that is something which is very important for us as an auditor. Okay, so please take it in return from the as a management representation that how many audit trails they have for a manual overridden of the system. This is very critical. Okay, such exception to be placed before audit committee and logs have to be maintained for 3 years. So this is very critical activity this is the first time which we are expected to do this activity, and we need to ensure that we do it perfectly. Now this is the system generating a report and telling us which accounts needs to be classified as an NPA, which accounts needs to be classified as a standard. So this is system driven. Now any system, any computerized system would have some limitations in terms of what can be the limitation. The limitation is, of course, that any computerized system is garbage in, garbage out, GIGO. So if you give a wrong information to the system would generate a wrong result. So this automation would also be handicapped with the fact that if the wrong information is fed to the system, this automation would not work. Now, when I refer to a wrong information in case of banks, what kind of wrong information I am referring to? So in banks, any customer would have two kinds of data. One is a transactional data, so what kind of transaction is doing. And one is a master data, which is created one time. And of course, there can be modification which can be done later on, but which is generated at the initial phase itself. So what kind of a master data would there be? So it would have details of personal information like name, address, father's name, PAN number, Aadhaar number, etc. Then mobile number, email address maybe. Then it would have some data which are relevant from the financial point of view, like say in case of a term loan, like in case of a car loan, it would give you data as to what is the amount of the car loan given to the customer, what is the rate of interest, Then when is the installment going to start? How many are the total number of installment? And what is the amount of installment? So we say it as a flow details. How much flow of transaction would happen in that account. Now, if suppose a car loan is given, the EMI was to be set at 20,000 rupees. Okay, but by mistake in the system only 2,000 was feeded. The customer paid only 2 installment out of 12 installment in a year. Would the system classify this account as an NP? Anybody? So 20,000 was the installment expected from the customer. So he has to pay 20,000 per month for 12 months. He only paid 40,000, only 2 installment he paid. But because the system was fed with wrong information, the system was given information that only 2,000 is expected every month. Would the system recognize this account as an NP?
No, never.
No. So this is the limitation, sir, which is there in case of this automated system. And how do we check for this kind of a failure of feeding correct information to the system? And this is much more serious, as Manmohan pointed out also, is that because there are a lot of mergers which happened last year, sir. And what happens when there is a merger of banks is that there is a merger of databases. Now the banks may be operating on the same software, but still the databases may have been created in a different kind of ways. So the architecture may be different for the databases. So whenever that merger happens of two databases, there are some errors which get generated into the system. So now these kind of errors we have been seeing for many years now. And what is the way through which you can actually verify that? So one of the ways through which we try and do it, we ask for the details of all the loans, the advances of the branch. So it would be CCOD one, then it would be TLDL. Now in TLDL, what we do is basically that we ask them to give the details as to the amount of loan, the date when the loan was given, how many installments are there, what is the amount of installment, then what is the current balance. If we have that information, we can use a very simple technique and we can use a schedule called as an amortization schedule. So if we do a Google, we write amortization, we will find a lot of formulas which are there. You can create that in your Excel itself. Okay, so we create that in the Excel itself. Try to analyze through the data which is been given that what should be the idle balance of this account. So we have find out cases where the idle balance is actually very less than the actual outstanding balance. We have seen cases where the account was for say 5 years. There was a car loan, the car loan was to be given for 5 years. 7 years have elapsed, the car loan is still running and it is still a standard account. So if it is an NP account, I can understand he's not paying. But account is standard, account is running beyond the due date. So 5 years maximum it could have run, it is running the 7th year and still it is being shown as standard. So this is one activity which I think everybody should do. And once you do that activity, you will find out cases, if there is any cases of where the master data has been wrongly fed into the system. And once you are able to identify any such cases, you can go back to the branch, try and look at that file, loan file, and see whether your deduction is right or not. And I can tell you, sir, every year we are finding this. Every year we are finding cases which needs to be classified as an NPA, but neither the system is recognizing those accounts as NPAs, not recognizing the accounts as irregular, and the bank sometimes, even the branch sometimes are unaware that the account needs to be classified as an NPA. But we have been able to identify such cases.
Sir, in this case, at times every year certain restructuring activities are undertaken, and particularly in this corona period, 2-3 times restructuring have been taken. So this restructuring would only be the reason which would give leverage from whatever you said, that time lag gap is there. Originally it was sanctioned for 7 years, it may be now running at 10th year or whatever. So but in this reschedulement, what I understand, only once reschedulement can be done, and if it is done next time, the status quo has to be maintained. If it is an NP at the time, the NP has to be status has to be maintained until the full recovery. So this exercise which you just informed all of our members, would also give them the kind of restructured accounts should be at the branch. And when we are signing number of accounts restructured, it is nil. Though it won't be this year, but usually it happened.
Right. So Satish, what you are saying is we need to understand one is in case we are able to identify say 10 accounts, and when we go to the branch, they are able to satisfy us that these are cases of restructuring. So we can then take a call based upon the restructuring guidelines, whether they are covered by the restructuring guidelines. So just saying the account has been restructured would not help. So if
Yeah.
you look at the restructuring guidelines, it talks about two things very importantly. One is it talks about the viability of the project. So you can restructure an account subject to the proving that the account is still viable. You cannot do a evergreening of the account. And secondly, what is important is that restructuring requires you to modify the terms and condition in the system, requires you to issue a letter saying that the account has been restructured with the revised terms and condition, and somehow it needs to be accepted by the borrower also. So unless until these three activities have been done, just saying that the account is restructured would not help. So a lot of times it happens that when we go and say that this account is an NPA, they would tell us that, sir, we have restructured the account. So, but restructuring per se requires these kind of an activity. And if you look at all the circulars which has come this time, so there are 5 circulars which has come on restructuring this year. And I can tell you in all these circulars, the RBI has now brought out a concept of this concept which I am telling you. So they have clearly brought it out as to invocation of restructure. They have started with the concept of where you have started with the restructuring and then the completion of restructuring. So they have clearly defined the timelines for it. So that is something which we need to verify. Okay. And in the circulars which has come, let me also tell, because you have raised this point, there are basically 2 circulars which are important this year. One is, of course, circular in relation to MSME restructuring, which they have again allowed for 1 more year. And there is another circular which came last year, which is in relation to COVID-related restructuring. So that they have again enhanced and allowed for 1 more year. But in all the circulars, as you also said, you can only take a benefit one time. So MSME restructuring circular is now there for 5 years now. But in those 5 years, you could have taken the benefit only once. You cannot take the benefit twice or thrice. Okay. So that also we need to verify. So this is one of the activities where you will be able to identify accounts where maybe you need to dwell a little deeper and then see whether what they have done is something which is acceptable. Okay. So that is important, sir. Last year, I remember, sir, as you told me, so we identified one such account when we visited, we told them that there is some problem in the account. They told us that we have done our restructuring. And after a lot of discussion which happened, I can tell you, sir, we qualified our report by saying that the restructuring is not as per the guidelines of the Reserve Bank of India. And the account needs to slip into doubtful category straightway because the restructuring was done last year, which was not as per the norms. So the restructuring cannot be considered and the account needs to straightway go into doubtful category. So that we will be only able to identify once we do this kind of an activity.
Sir, in one of my cases, long back, I've classified the account from standard to loss direct.
So it happens, sir.
Yes.
And I have seen these happening a lot of times in staff loan accounts also. I don't know what the reason why in staff loan accounts certainly the systems does not seem to make account as NPA, and also the branches are very reluctant in classifying the account as NPA. But I have seen many cases in staff account there were no repayments for many years, and still the account were running, and there was no irregularity which was being shown in the accounts. So sometimes it is also happens. So we need to be careful.
And why I shared this, as you shared that straight away doubtful, our members at times are calling, at least to me, and you must be also getting so many calls. They need to know whether they can straight away classify from standard to D1 or D2 or D3, whatever, instead of classifying it to a substandard.
Right, right. So we'll definitely cover it in the coming slides also.
Yeah.
Somebody has asked a question, Vijay Krishna V. can we generate the report from CES on account restructured or rescheduled, etc.? So, sir, to my mind, we can generate, if you want to look at a specific account, you can definitely look from in that account what kind of restructuring or reschedulement has been done. But if you want to look for all the account, that you get a single report that wherever there has been a restructuring or reschedulement in the account in your branch for the whole year, that is generally not possible through a menu option. It is through the backend can generate such report through running of some kind of programs at the backend through query of that database. But there is no menu option which would be able to generate the report for all the accounts of the branch for the whole year. So that is generally not possible. Okay. Anyways, so this is why I told you about this automation, is that now our role is one, we need to check this process. In case the process is not working fine, we need to bring it out through our report on internal financial control. Secondly, we need to check the manual overrides which has been done in the automated process. And third, we need to check whether the master data has been correctly fed into the system. In this case, you will be able to identify and you will be assured that you have actually covered the most of the area which you creates an audit risk for us as far as non-reporting of NPAs is concerned. Okay. Now,
here master data is important. Also, whenever you ask or tell that this particular account is actually NPA, what they will do is they will take you to Finacle demand and recovery report and then show कि नहीं इसमें तो ज्यादा रखे सर पैसे, तो NPA है ही नहीं सर, तो वहां पर मास्टर डेटा में प्लानिंग की होती है, गलत की होती है.
So that is important. Yeah. Okay. Now, next, what we need to do, and this is also somebody was asking a question about restructuring and reschedulement. So there are a lot of reports which are generated by the backend of any bank, and they are loaded onto some point in intranet of the same bank. Now, these reports are basically used by the bank also for the purpose of controlling a lot of activities. Like what kind of activities I have seen, like it can be insurance expired report. How many accounts the insurance is expired. Then they go for acknowledgement of debt or a promissory note every 3 years. So there would be a report as to how many accounts are there where the AOD was more than 3 years old. So these kind of reports are there, which would actually help you in doing your audit. So try and identify that internet site where these reports are loaded, and you can download those reports for the purpose of your audit. Okay. Then next point, which is very again critical, is now let me ask you a question. So suppose you have an account with your branch. That account seems to be little weak, maybe not an NPA right now. Do you want to know the status of that account with, say, that account is of has an exposure of 10 crore rupees with your bank, and you can see from the balance sheet that he has an exposure with multiple banks. So he may be, say, operating with 5 banks. Would it help that in case you are able to see what kind of status that account has with those 4 other banks, would it help in your audit? Do you feel that whether those banks have classified that account as an NPA maybe, or maybe classified that account as an SMA, or there is a concept of a red flagged account which comes in LFA? So whether any of such account has been classified as a red flag account in some other bank, would it help in your audit?
Yes, of course, it will affect.
Yeah. So one of the ways through which you can actually generate that data about the status in other banks is a report called as a CRILC report, CRILC. So CRILC is actually a database which RBI has created, and every bank having accounts where there is exposure of 5 crores and more. So in case any customer has an exposure of 5 crores or more with that bank, they have to mandatorily do a reporting to CRILC, and every bank can would do it. So it is kind of an interbank platform, and I can generate a report in which the status with all other banks would be shown. So suppose that account is an NPA with 2 banks. So they are operating with 5 banks. They are NPA with 2 banks. Then you need to be more careful about such account, because then there is a very strong likelihood and maybe not this year, but next year this account would slip into NPA because it is already showing signs of weakness. Or maybe you need to look deeper. Maybe the branch has done some kind of activity to save the account from becoming NPA. They may have given loans, extra loans, or they may have resorted to restructuring, which they are not disclosing. So that kind of information really helps. And this is one way of getting that information, which is otherwise not available to us as an
So
auditor.
this report is available with the branches. I mean, can you
Yeah,
generate it
So,
from the
so
branch?
you can ask the branch manager. They would be able to generate and give it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Then similarly, we have a central fraud registry, CFR. This is again a central database for all frauds reporting done by the banks. So this can also actually help in certain cases, especially where there is you need to understand whether a fraud reporting has been done or not. So in certain cases, there might be a fraud which has been done. You need to check whether the fraud reporting has been completed as per the requirement of RBI. So you can refer to the CFR, basically Central Fraud Registry, for verifying that. Okay, so these are some of the areas. Now another area which is again very critical for us is SMA report. Now, what is SMA? If anybody can tell me what is an SMA? Are they allowed to open mics, Satish?
Yes,
Or is
yes,
it
we
not?
can. If somebody wants to give answer or come with video, we can always allow.
Okay.
They
Great.
can give in their names in chat. I'll allow.
Okay.
Or small answer they can give in chat also.
Okay. Great, sir. So what is an SMA account is basically the full form is special mention accounts. Now what is SMA is? SMA is a standard account. It is not an NP. But this account has some irregularity. It is not 100% as per the agreement between the bank and the borrower. That irregularity is not enough to make this account as an NPA right now, but it has some irregularity. So one way of verifying any NPAs in a branch is that you look at the SMA report. We always take the report as on 31st March, verify that report completely. So as per the bank, it is not an NPA account, but these accounts have some irregularities. So when we verify those reports and we look from an auditor's point of view, sometimes we have found out cases that needs to be classified as an NPA and which the branch has failed to do so. Then very important, sir, again, what happens is during the last 2-3 months of any year, what branch manager is interested to do is to somehow follow with the customers, get the money so that the account do not slip into NPA category. Now, if he does a follow up, he gets the money from the borrower, account does not slip into NPA, I have no problems. I have nothing against it because that is the role of the branch manager. So I have nothing against it. But sometimes what we have seen, they do some kind of activities which are something which are not permitted sometimes, which are sometimes borderline unethical or sometimes even illegal, which they do for the purpose of saving the account from becoming an NPA. Now, how can we identify any such activity which our branch might have done? Okay. So what we do, sir, is we take this report of SMA as on Feb end also, January end also, and December end also. And then what we do, we take it into Excel, we do a VLOOKUP, and the basic purpose is to identify any such accounts which are appearing in the December, January, or Feb report, and which is not appearing in the March report. So these are those accounts which were irregular earlier, but now have been regularized. Please check how they were regularized. If it is from a genuine source, there is a recovery and the account has been regularized, I have no problems. But if some kind of activity has been done, say a TOD has been granted, there is a temporary limit increase which has been done. We found out cases are like where check purchase were done at the last moment to save the account from becoming an NPA. If such kind of activities has been done, then maybe you need to be. This would give you a list of such potential accounts where this kind of an activity might have been done, which you need to verify in details. This is one activity. Then next, which is again important, is suspense and sundries. Now, suspense and sundries, these are office accounts. I have done a lot of audits in banks, sir, including special investigative audits. And I can tell you, sir, these office accounts have been misused a lot of time for perpetrating frauds in banks. So important is again, LFAR even asks you about outstanding entries. So please look at the entries which are outstanding in these accounts, nature of those entries, whether they need to continue as an outstanding entry. and then also look at maybe in the March month what kind of activities they have been doing. So I've seen cases where credit was given to an account for say from to save the account from becoming NPA, debit was given to the suspense account, and after the auditor left, the reverse entry was done. So these kind of things we have seen. Then nature of entries. One such case we saw, one such instance we saw was that there was an entry which was outstanding for 2 years. We asked them what is the nature of the entry. After much persuasion, they told us that the entry relates to a fraud which was done at the branch, and the customer was compensated for that fraud because he went into banking ombudsman and all. And after the customer was compensated, it was parked to the suspense account. Now, whether it needs to remain in a suspense account, whether it is actually an asset for the branch. So after we verified it, we told them that either you show us evidence that you have some control over some security through which you will be able to recover this loss. Otherwise, it needs to be written off, or 100% provision is required on this entry. So these kind of issues can be important. Okay. Then inter-office recon. By inter-office reconciliation, everybody would say is handled at a centralized activity. Of course, there is a special cell which looks at inter-office reconciliation. I'm not asking you to ask the branch to give you a reconciliation. What I'm telling you is that what happens is there's some entries which needs to be corrected at the branch level, which are flagged off to branches. That these entries you need to check and do at your own level. So these are part of reconciliation. They are not done the reconciliation themselves, but some portion of the reconciliation they have to the entries needs to be done at the branch level, which are parked to the branch office accounts, and that we need to verify and check whether it has some implication on our financial reports. So it becomes very critical. Last point, which I think is very important activity which we need to do, and then we'll start off with our IRAC norms, is that there is a list of NPAs as on 31st March 2021 which you will have, and there is a list of NPAs as on 31st March 2022 which you will have. Please compare both of them. After comparison, we will find three tables created. One is the table of accounts which were NPAs last year and NPAs in this year. And there would be a list of accounts which were NPAs last year but are not an NPA this year. And there would be accounts which were not an NPA last year but which are NPAs this year. In each of this list, which we need to do some activity. Okay. The first list, which were NPAs last year, are NPAs this year. What we need to verify, sir? What do you think we need to verify, sir?
Which were last year NPA, not this
And this year also they are an NPA.
So how they've been upgraded? That's
no. So they've not been upgraded. So they are NPAs last year, NPAs this year. So in that,
this year also
we need to verify first the date of NPA, sir. So we have seen cases where the date of NPA has changed. Last year, the date of NPA was 30th September 2020. This year, it has become 30th September 2021. So the account was a substandard last year, continues to be a substandard this year also. So this we need to verify. Secondly, we need to verify recovery in NPA accounts. Now, what happens in case an account becomes an NPA is that income is only taken on realization basis, right? We all know that. Now, in case there is a recovery in NPA account, RBI says the bank would decide a policy as to how they will adjust the recovery in NPA account, whether against the principal first or the interest portion first. And they would have to follow it consistently. Now, generally, the banks have followed a policy of first adjusting that recovery against interest, and then if a balance is left, then adjusting it with the principal. Okay. Now, what we have seen is because the interest is not applied to an account, whenever there is a recovery, sometimes what they do is they credit the account and they do not reverse the unapplied interest. So what happens ultimately is the principal gets adjusted and the income is not taken into account, which is against the policy of the bank in case of recovery for NPA accounts. So this is important. So recovery in NPA account, we need to verify. Okay. Third, now the list on which were NPAs last year but are not NPAs this year. What can be the reason? One, you of course, Satish ji, we spoke about is upgradation of account. So the account got upgraded. What can be other reason? The account got closed down. There may be 100% recovery and the account got closed down, or there was some one-time settlement or compromise which was done in the account, and based upon which the recovery was done and the account got closed down. Now, one-time settlement, LFAR asks you a specific question about one-time settlement cases. You ask the branch manager how many cases are there, he will generally say 0. So this is one activity through which you will be able to identify all such cases. Check the compromise letter, check whether the closure has been done as per the compromise letter. Upgradation. Now, upgradation, why it is important is, we'll take an example to understand it. Suppose there was an account which an NPA last year. 4 installments were overdue last year. This year, the customer paid 4 installments of last year and say 11 installment of current year in the month of March. March 2022, we paid 15 installments. Now the branch manager says that the NPA norm says 90 days. Now there is only 1 installment which is overdue, so the account can be upgraded to standard category. Do we agree, sir, as an auditor?
No.
No. Satish says no. Now, what is the norms? RBI says, sir, for downgrading the account, there is a 90 days norm. If the account gets downgraded, if you want to upgrade the account, then complete overdue should have been recovered on the day of upgradation. There should not be even rupee 1 which is overdue, right? And they have clarified this year, sir, that in case a customer account, suppose the customer had 3 accounts, okay, 3 loans with the bank. One of the account became NPA, so all 3 became NPAs, right? Now suppose the branch manager claims that the 2 accounts there is nil overdue, so I can upgrade those accounts, and the account which has some outstanding, some overdue, it may remain into NPA category. So this, they again have clarified this year by saying that when you upgrade an account, that customer should not have any overdues in any of his account. Then only he can be upgraded. So you cannot upgrade an account just because that overdues in that account has been recovered. All the account of that customer, there should be nil overdues.
So we need to understand that NPA is a customer, not the account.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Third, recovery in account. Now I'll tell you a very interesting example for it, sir, and why I'm telling you to actually look out for it. So one of the case, somebody called me up. I have been telling this modus operandi right from many years now. So he told me, sir, we have done this comparison, and last year there were 800 NPAs in the branch. It was actually a rural branch. This year, the list of NPAs comprises of less than 100 names. So we were surprised that more than 700 accounts have disappeared from the list of NPAs. So we asked them whether you have checked what happened. They said, sir, there has been a recovery in the account. Accounts have been closed down. So we asked them to check the source of recovery. So you find a very interesting way the recovery has happened. So on 1st March morning, the branch manager started doing entries in the account. Say Ramlal account had a debit balance of 5 lakh rupees. It was in NPA. So Ramlal account credit 5 lakh rupees, suspense account debit 5 lakh rupees.
Oh.
Recovery in a Ramlal account closed down. Okay. Now the problem is there is a debit entry in suspense account. So in the evening, he did a reverse entry. Ramlal new account debit 5 lakh rupees, suspense account credit 5 lakh rupees. So Ramlal had to pay 5 lakh in the morning, 5 lakh in the evening. No difference to his life. Suspense account entry has been knocked out. So there is no problem to the branch manager. But what happened in the process is that 700 accounts got disappeared from the list of NPAs. And what they were hoping was, because these entries were done in the first week of March, so they were hoping that the auditors in any case would not verify these accounts, as the accounts cannot become an NPA being opened in the month of March itself. So more than 700 accounts this way got disappeared from the list of NPAs. So this we need to verify. Then third, the accounts which were not an NPA last year, which are an NPA this year. So these are basically freshly identified NPAs, where the branch itself has declared the account as an NPA. There is no contribution on your part right now. So how you can contribute in these accounts, sir? what kind of an activity we can do as an auditor there.
We need to really check what is the date of NPA.
Very good, sir. Satish ji, the date of NPA becomes important. Like he told in the beginning itself, that certain times we find out that the account may have been classified as an NPA in this year, but the date of NPA should actually be in the previous year or maybe 2 years back or 3 years back also. So in that case, sir, we need to change the date of NPA. And the account which may have been taken to substandard may straightway go into doubtful categories. Okay, so that becomes important. Secondly, the income recognition norms of RBI says, suppose an account became an NPA on 30th September 2020, right? Now, after 30th September, there should not be an application of interest unless until it is realized. Okay, well and fine. So banks generally, once they identify an account as an NPA, mark that account as an NPA in the system do not apply an interest. This we have seen. Generally, there is no problem. But these RBI circular says something else also. It says that after the rate of NPA, you will not apply interest. That is okay. But what interest you have already applied before the account became an NPA, because you were on accrual system of accounting for a standard account, and which is not realized, need to be also de-recognized. This is a problem area for the banks, which we have seen that the de-recognition does not happen, or it does not happen correctly. So this we need to check, sir. So just to understand it, say account became an NPA on 30th September 2021. Should I start looking for this financial year? So from 1st April 2021 only, we should check, or should we look for the previous financial year also? So 1/4/2020, we should start looking at, or maybe even before that also. What do you think, sir? What we should do?
To any extent, sir.
Okay. So Satish ji says to any extent. So as per RBI, sir, you can go up to the date of disbursement of the advance. So there is no time limit which has been prescribed. Now this, they have clarified this year, sir, which is important for us to know. So this is a clarification or maybe a change which they have done. You can take it as you want to take it. So they have clarified, sir, if as part of the original sanction itself, there was a moratorium on payment of interest. So some account was there where there is a moratorium on payment of the interest also. So you are not required to pay interest as well as principal for a certain period of time, right? And after the moratorium period gets over, the account slips into NPA category. Okay. So for the period there was a moratorium on payment of interest, the income cannot be de-recognized, because they say at the original sanction itself, you intended to capitalize that interest. You were not asking for payment, so you were intending to capitalize that interest. So that interest cannot be de-recognized even when the account becomes an NPA. For the period when the moratorium was there on the payment of interest, that period interest cannot be de-recognized. This is a very important.
In case during moratorium interest is to be paid.
No, sir, there are certain cases where during moratorium, there is a moratorium on payment of interest also. Like education loan, education loan. Sometimes in case of education loan, there is no requirement of even payment of interest during the period of studies.
Yes.
So in that case, even when this account becomes an NPA, because there is a moratorium on payment of interest itself, they say this interest cannot be de-recognized during the moratorium. Okay, so this is a very important clarification or a change, whatever way you look at it. But this they have said this time, so this is what we need to keep in mind. Okay, sir. So
yes,
these
sir.
are something which is very important now. Okay, so there is also a capital adequacy statement which we sign, the Basel norms. What do we check in that, sir?
Most of us generally just sign it.
Yeah, so that's a problem, and this is what Manmohan ji was also saying. So we are professionals, sir. Wherever we sign as a professional, it has a certain importance attached to it, and we should realize its importance. If we don't realize it, nobody else would, right? So what we are required to do, sir, so there's some capital adequacy. I'm not asking you to understand the nuisances of Basel norms, but what we need to understand is, sir, there's some division of advances and deposits and borrowings which is there. There are some buckets and there are some risk weights which are mentioned against it. So please don't understand the risk weight if you don't want to understand, because in any case they are for the complete bank. So these, in any case, the central statutory auditors would look at whether the correct risk weights have been applied to the buckets. What is important for us to understand, sir, is that buckets contain factual data. How the buckets have been made is that is a factual data. What accounts should fall in what bucket. We are responsible for the correctness of those buckets. And this data cannot be generated through any menu option in any CBS system. So you need to ask for the worksheet from the branch so that you are able to verify whether the buckets have been correctly made or not. So I have seen cases, advances, so divided into certain buckets. When you total out those advances, the figure do not match with the figures of advances in the balance sheet. And we have signed both these statements. So how can this be possible? There is one balance sheet which says the advances are X, and there is a capital education statement which says advances are Y, and we are signing both of them, and we are saying both are right. So we need to be careful, sir. Okay.
In many years back, when Basel 2 was started, I hope, I gave MOCs for this Basel also. I got.
So in case you make an account an NPA, sir, or you change the classification as to security-wise classification, or you change the classification otherwise also, it would result into an account MOC in a this Basel side also, because it would directly affect the basic classification also. But sometimes we are not aware of it, so we even when we are making a MOC for maybe an account becoming an NPA, we don't realize that the MOC also needs to be given effect in the Basel norms, because there would be a provision which should happen for that account which we are declaring as an NPA, so it would directly affect the Basel norms also.
Sir, एक example के साथ बता दें please ये वाला.
मैं कोशिश करता हूँ सर एक चार्ट बना के मैं आपको ना थोड़ा सा आगे इसको समझाता हूँ कि कैसे इफेक्ट है.
Right, sir.
Okay. Last thing, sir, which I wanted to make you understand before we start off with the IRAC norms is, now there is one important criteria which is contingent liabilities in case of banks. So contingent liabilities, of course, there are two types in banks. One is on constituent account like LC, BGs, LOCs, वगैरह given to the on behalf of the customers, and there are others like which are there in case of any company like claims against the bank not acknowledged as debt. So what we have been doing is, sir, we have been checking the legal expenses of the branch. If we find, we take out the vouchers, we ask them to take out the vouchers. From the vouchers, we verify for what case the payment has been done. In case we find any case where the bank is a defendant, then that represent at least a contingent liability. And sometimes we have even find out actual liabilities for which provision is required. Especially in case of disputes with the landlord and all, where the provision might be required in the books of the bank. So that becomes very critical. So please, I would request you to please look at the legal expenses more closely for the purpose of identifying any such issues. Okay. Next. Okay. So reverse charge. A lot of people would say, sir, GST is not applicable to banks, branches per se. But you please understand the filing of returns or payment of taxes may be done at a centralized activity. But in case there are certain expenses, especially where reverse charge is applicable, that information has to be given by the branch owner. So unless until the branch gives that information to their controlling office, they are likely to miss out payment on reverse charge. So what can be the important areas in case of branches is, it can be GTA, advocates, of course, would necessarily be there. Then arbitral tribunal, recovery agents, DSA, direct selling agents, security services, and services by business facilitators. Yeah, rural branches, it becomes very critical. So they actually have a lot of business facilitators which are working with them. So we need to maybe clarify. This will less.
Sir, in case of payments to advocates, normally accounts are debited. So what they say is our profit and loss is not hit. So we're not supposed to pay GST and the reverse charge. What is your?
So we have who better to answer than Manmohan ji is here, who is a GST expert. So let us take his services to understand
And
that.
one more area, they also say that TDS is also not applicable because it is not hitting our profit and loss. We are
TDS
debiting our
definitely.
customer.
So TDS definitely will understand, sir. Manmohan ji, if you can enlighten us on the aspect of GST reverse charge in case it is debited to a customer's account.
Sir, unmute करना पड़ेगा. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Satish ji and Lokesh ji. Definitely, the reverse charge liability is, it has been always said that this has been dealt with at the head office level. लेकिन अगर हम कहीं पर भी ब्रांच में कस्टमर के अकाउंट पे रिवर्स चार्ज लायबिलिटी को कहीं डेबिट कर रहे हैं, तो डेफिनेटली बैंक हैज डिडक्टेड या not cleared his bill and that liability has to be deposited with the government. तो कस्टमर को डेबिट करना उस अकाउंट में, क्योंकि कस्टमर के अकाउंट पे कोई भी रिवर्स चार्ज लायबिलिटी यूजुअली आप जानते हैं कि टैक्स इनवॉइस जब इशू किया जाता है कस्टमर के द्वारा, किसी भी वेंडर के द्वारा, तो टैक्स इनवॉइस में जीएसटी अमाउंट उसको पे नहीं करना होता है, केवल बेसिक अमाउंट हमें पे करना होता है, और जितना भी बैलेंस अमाउंट है उसको हमारे को रिटेन करके उस रिवर्स चार्ज लायबिलिटी को हमें पे करना होता है। तो कस्टमर को केवल बेसिक अमाउंट के लिए क्रेडिट करना होता है। तो इवन इफ अगर उन्होंने पहले पूरे अमाउंट को क्रेडिट करके और फिर उसको डेबिट किया है, बट देन दैट नीड टू बी सप्लीमेंटेड कि इसको अल्टीमेटली गवर्नमेंट एक्सचेकर को पे क्या किया। उसके लिए हमने कई बार कई बैंकों से उनका एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव प्रोसीजर मांगा कि अल्टीमेटली हेड ऑफिस इसको पे करता कैसे और आपकी लायबिलिटी को उठाता कैसे सिस्टम से। Until unless you create a reverse charge liability in your books of accounts, तो अल्टीमेटली ओवरऑल सिस्टम में किस तरीके से लायबिलिटी क्रिएट होती है, कौन सा बिल रिवर्स चार्ज के लिए लायबल है और कौन सा बिल रिवर्स चार्ज के लिए लायबल है, ये सेंट्रल लेवल पे डिसाइड करना बड़ा मुश्किल काम है। बट इसका कभी भी कोई सेटिस्फैक्टरी आंसर मिला नहीं सर। और सो फार एज द टीडीएस तो हमेशा ब्रांच या रीजनल ऑफिस के लेवल पे होता है, उसमें तो यूजुअली हेड ऑफिस के लेवल पे कभी भी होता भी नहीं है, और उसकी तो कंप्लायंस ब्रांच लेवल पे और रीजनल ऑफिस लेवल पे करनी ही करनी होती है सर।
मेरा क्वेश्चन स्पेसिफिक है।
आई थिंक इसमें ना क्रिटिकल पॉइंट क्या है सतीश जी, मैं आपको बताता हूँ।
या प्लीज,
कि हमें बिल देखने की जरूरत है कि बिल किसको रेज हुआ। इफ द बिल हैज बीन रेज्ड टू द बैंक, even if the bank has paid by debiting the account of the customer, please understand that the liability lies on the bank itself. He may be recovering it from the customer account, so that becomes important. If the bill has been directly raised to the customer account, in that case he is the pay, and if it has been getting debited from the customer account directly, then the situation might be different. So you will have to see from the facts of the case, so it might differ from case to case.
but most of the time even advocates or recovery agencies, they are always billing to the bank.
Then sir, the bank is liable. There is no doubt.
And banks are not deducting TDS, just saying that it is not hitting our profit and loss. It is hitting the profit and loss of the customer, and customer debited into the bank charges is not also deducting TDS. So I personally, wherever I am going, I am asking them to pay TDS on all those advocate bills and recovery agent bills. But it is they are not actually doing it.
Yes, definitely Satish ji, this is a very gray area, and there is no privity of contract between the customer or the valuer or the legal search advocate, that they are been engaged by the branch only, और उनकी जो भी बिलिंग है होनी ही ब्रांच को चाहिए, और ब्रांच के थ्रू फिर ये रिकवरी होती है। दिस इज ओनली ए रिकवरी टू द बोरोवर अकाउंट। अगर बोरोवर अकाउंट से रिकवरी करने का मतलब ये नहीं है कि दिस इज बीन डायरेक्टली पेड बाय द बोरोवर। और इसका जो भी टोटल ओनर्स है ये सारा का सारा बैंक पे, क्योंकि रिसिपिएंट ऑफ सर्विस बैंकर है, इज नॉट द कस्टमर हु इज रिसिपिएंट ऑफ सर्विस।
और तरुण जी का क्वेश्चन आया बीच में, इसमें मैं ले रहा हूं। उन्होंने कहा कि if TDS is centralized, not at branch level, then what is the branch responsibility? Even if it is centralized, branch has to report, generate the report that look, we have paid. And my question to Lokesh is there any mechanism where we can find out how much amount is paid to different agencies by the branch by debiting the different borrower accounts. Is there any mechanism available?
No, sir. No, it is not there actually. So there are a lot of things which we would love to have well, some kind of a reporting which we can actually use for the purpose of the audit. But somehow that what I should say, that perfect information is generally not available, because we live in an imperfect world. So that perfect information generally is not available. So, but
And
we can always.
one thing is reminded. I'm sorry, I'm interpreting.
Please, sir. Please.
What happened? It actually happened to me. So normally our bills are also to be paid through a provision as on 31st March, and TDS has to be deducted as on 31st March, which actually gets paid in April, whichever date. Now what happened? Many branches they do not deduct on 31st March the TDS, वो हम फिर tax audit report से कराते हैं. Many branches they deduct on the date of payment. Many branches they deduct on the 31st March. The issue which actually hit us, हमने report जो करना था वो कर दिया, is okay. जब वो 26 AS में आता है, वो कभी 31st March 22 की डेट में आएगा, कभी April 22 की डेट में आएगा, और I am the one who suffered a lot by virtue of which मेरा रिफंड बहुत अटका. मैंने भी लॉकडाउन में 7-8 लाख रुपए रिफंड इकट्ठा किया है गवर्नमेंट से, इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट से. इसे अभी तक भी पेंडिंग है, ब्रांचेस का, बैंक का अभी तक भी पेंडिंग है.
सर वो आई अंडरस्टैंड. वो एक्चुअली क्या है ना, कुछ बैंक्स क्या कर रहे हैं, दे हैव टेकन अ पोजीशन इन व्हिच दे आर सेइंग दैट वी विल नॉट टेक, मतलब जैसे द इन दैट एक्सपेंस वुड गेट डिसअलाउड. अब तो 20% रह गया डिसअलाउड, बट अदरवाइज पहले ही उन्होंने कॉल ले लिया कि से द एक्सपेंस वुड गेट डिसअलाउड, बट इट वुड गेट अलाउड इन द नेक्स्ट ईयर.
Yeah.
So we will actually do a TDS in the next year itself. When we actually do a payment, we will take a disallowance in the tax audit report in that year. So that conscious call they have taken in certain cases, but it is okay, sir. You can't do anything about it. But this is some kind of a issue which is always there.
So question is whether we have to, in our tax audit report, whether we have to report that TDS is not deducted, or
in case you are required to sign a tax audit report, definitely. But generally, what I have seen is that the banks generally now are not asking you to do a tax audit at the branch level now. So they have centralized that activity in most of the cases. And in any case, see, मनमोहन जी तो इसके मतलब इस issue को लेके काफी दिन से लड़ भी रहे हैं कि एक अपना there is some essay which talks about noun clear, which is that you have to check for the compliance of all laws when you do a statutory audit. So of course that is a different issue, but the laws like GST or income tax, which we are well aware of, we should do a check for the compliance at the branch level, even when the activity might not have been perfectly done at the branch, like GST I told you. So what kind of information mechanism is there which they are able to pick up liability for reverse charge? That we need to understand. One more important thing as far as GST, sir, I tell you, there are two options which the banks are using. So certain banks, what they do is, say suppose they have to take a charge of 100 rupees and there is a GST of 18 rupees. So they will charge to the customer 118, directly credit the income account by 118, and at the end of the month they do 18 by 118 to determine what kind of a GST liability they have. This is one option. So they take a gross amount, do a 18 by 118. Certain banks, what they do is they charge 100 and then they will do a 9 or 18 rupees to the GST account. Now in certain cases what happens is they charge 100, they forget to charge GST. So you need to also sometimes understand the process itself might be right, but the implementation may not be happening in the correct fashion. Okay, so that is important.
Yes, Satish ji, just to give my view, ये जो provisions के ऊपर TDS है ना, ये एक बहुत लॉन्ग डिबेटेड इशू है. ना तो ICAI ने इसके ऊपर कोई गाइडेंस नोट इशू किया, ना इनकम टैक्स अथॉरिटीज ने इसके ऊपर कोई क्लैरिफिकेशन इशू किया. सो फार एज माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज कंसर्न, जब तक हम कोई भी चीज प्रोविजन रखते हैं, व्हेन वी से इट इज ए प्रोविजन, तब तक उसके ऊपर कोई TDS नहीं कटना चाहिए, बिकॉज अदरवाइज भी इनकम टैक्स में प्रोविजंस आपको एज एन एक्सपेंस अलाउ नहीं होते हैं. और प्रोविजंस को आप 31 मार्च को या बैलेंस शीट डेट के ऊपर क्रिएट करते हैं और इमीडिएटली नेक्स्ट डेट पे आप उसको रिवर्स करते हैं, और जो एक्चुअल आप पेमेंट करते हैं वो ही आपको उस साल के लिए अलाउ होती है, जो भी आपने एक्चुअल एक्सपेंस बुक किया होता है पेमेंट बेसिस पे। अगर मैं केवल ऑडिट फीस की ही बात करूं, सपोज कीजिए, तो से सपोज बैंकर्स ने ऑडिट फीस का प्रोविजन किया, लेकिन 31 मार्च को, आज की सिनेरियो में तो कई लोगों को तो ऑडिट अलॉट भी नहीं हुए थे 31 मार्च को, तो 31 मार्च को तो ये भी नहीं पता था कि कौन ऑडिटर होगा, तो टीडीएस कैसे कट जाएगा और किसके अकाउंट में कट जाएगा। दूसरा, सपोज वो ऑडिटर कैरी नहीं करता है ऑडिट को, तो क्या टीडीएस फिर उसके ऊपर दोबारा काटा जाएगा और दूसरे ऑडिटर का काटा जाएगा। तो मेरे अंडरस्टैंडिंग में प्रोविजंस के ऊपर कभी भी टीडीएस काटा नहीं जाना चाहिए। बट यस, क्योंकि इनकम टैक्स की तरफ से भी कोई क्लैरिफिकेशंस नहीं है जी, और इसकी आपके अपने इंस्टीट्यूट की तरफ से भी कोई क्लैरिफिकेशंस नहीं है, तो कुछ लोग काटते हैं, कुछ लोग नहीं काटते हैं। क्लैरिफिकेशन शैल कम फ्रॉम बोथ द अथॉरिटीज।
सर क्लैरिफिकेशन, सबसे बड़ी क्लैरिफिकेशन तो यही है ना, आई एम सॉरी, आई एम नॉट इन एट पार विद यू. TDS is to be deducted on accrual, on payment or accrual basis, on credit basis, whichever is earlier. और वो वहां ये भी कहता है, वो एंट्री आप चाहे वो किसी भी अकाउंट में किसी भी नॉर्म्स में करो, तो आपको अगर एक्रूअल कर दिया तो आपको टीडीएस काटना है. और प्रोविजंस जो दे आर प्रोविजंस इन ट्रू सेंस, जिसका हमें पता ही नहीं कि कितना होना है, खर्चा कितना आएगा, उसका एस्टिमेटेड प्रोविजन कर दिया 5,000 10,000, वहां तक तो ठीक है, प्रोविजन हो गया, और फिर एक्चुअल जब पेमेंट होगी तब उसका टीडीएस आना चाहिए. बट लाइक देयर आर एक्सपेंसेस लाइक आवर ऑडिट फीस व्हिच इज क्लियरली अंडरस्टूड अवेलेबल, बल्कि उनको तो 31 मार्च से बहुत पहले आ जाता है, वॉचर बन के आता है कि आपको कैसे कैसे कौन कौन से हेड में डेबिट या क्रेडिट करना है. तो वो एक वेल एस्टेब्लिश्ड आइडेंटिफाइड अमाउंट है. उसमें आज के सिनेरियो में आप ये जरूर कह सकते हैं कि भैया आपने जो कहा कि ऑडिटर्स नहीं पता थे किसको, पर इट हैज टू बी पेड टू सम ऑडिटर. और टीडीएस ये तो है नहीं कि उस समय प्रोविजन करते समय हमें ऑडिटर का नाम देना है, उसका पैन नंबर देना है. वो तो जब वो ऑडिट हो जाएगी उसके टाइम है 30 अप्रैल तक पेमेंट करने का, और रिटर्न फाइल करने का 31 मई तक का टाइम है. तब तक तो एस्टेब्लिश्ड है किस सीए किस आइडेंटिटी किस फर्म को टीडीएस कटना है. सो टू दैट एक्सटेंड आई डिसएग्री विद यू, सॉरी सर. बाकी लोकेश जी क्या कहते हैं?
सर एक्चुअली ना, वैसे ये जो हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, एक्चुअली प्रोविजन ऑफ ऑडिट फीस एट द बैंक्स इज नॉट जनरली डन एट द ब्रांच लेवल. So it is more of a activity which is done centralized. But of course, if there is an actual liability in terms of payment of audit fees, so there would be a requirement of deduction of TDS also, as Satish said, in my opinion, of course. And I think the name can come later in also. But if I know the amount which I have to pay, and I am creating a provision for that amount, then based upon it, of course, I have to do a TDS in case I want to claim an expenditure. In case I want to forego that 20% and I am ready to claim it in the next year, of course, I can defer the TDS provision to that extent and do the TDS in the next year itself. So that is there. But I think most of the cases, the provision for audit fee is not done at the branch level. So as well as we can actually not get into argument on that point actually.
इसमें सर कुछ क्वेरीज आई हैं मेंबर्स की,
हाँ पहले वो क्वेरीज लेते हैं. हाँ क्वेरीज ले लेते हैं. वो आई थिंक आर मोर क्रिटिकल.
ठीक है. एज दैट मैं सबसे लास्ट से चल रहा हूँ. As the TDS obligations are at actual level, but the TDS rules not followed at branch level. This is one information. There is no tax audit at branch level. In this circumstance, the provisions which were not applied till 31st March 22, how to be verified? How do we verify tax obligations? So this is one. De-recognize the interest not capitalized. ये हमारे पहले वाली उसमें थी. All arrears should have been paid.
I think he answered
Yes,
to the question
yes.
which I.
Yeah. बस सर अभी इतना ही था.
Okay. एक राकेश जी का मुझे और देखा, if rate of interest on loan against FDR automatically changes, if rate of FDR changes time to time, is it changes automatically or bank offer changes the ROI of loan against deposit? तो राकेश जी इसमें ना क्या है कि I can tell you in most of the CBS system there is a concept of loan account being packed with something. So they say it as packing. So if you pack the loan account with the rate of the FD, so whenever the rate of FD would change, the rate of interest in the loan account would also change. Okay. So if that packing has been done, the rate would change. If the packing has not been done, then of course they are independent to each other, and then if it is not done manually, then there would be a concept of an income leakage or an extra interest being charged to the customer. Okay.
Okay, sir, रजनीश जी का एक और क्वेश्चन वो भी ले लो सर
How to check if system is red flagging the account correctly so as to confirm internal control over the same. So sir, red flagging is not system control actually. Red flagging, what is red flagging is basically, so there are two concepts. One is called as a red flag account and another is what we call as an early warning signals. So if you want to actually understand this concept in detail, you should refer to the Master Circular of Fraud which the RBI has issued. So what they have told about red flagging is, one, you need to understand red flagging is only applicable to accounts which has an exposure of 50 crores and above to the bank. It is not applicable to any account which has an exposure of less than 50 crores. Now, what is the concept of red flagging is that you have some early warning signals which RBI has listed out. Banks can add to that early warning signals and can also create their own list. So if there is any account which has any early warning signals, it needs to be reported to the fraud monitoring group of that bank. So FMG would check whether there is a some early warning signals in any account. If they find yes, they are early warning signals, they would report this account as a red flag in CRILC, which I told you earlier, through platform. They would report this account as a red flag. The purpose is they are not saying the account is a fraud. They are saying there is some problem in the account. We are investigating the account. And then they have a timelines which is maximum 6 months in which they have to verify and ensure if it is a fraud, they would report this as a fraud. If it is not a fraud, then they would remove it from the red flag status. So this is in short the concept of red flagging. So it is all manual. It is not system generated red flagging which is there.
So one time settlement का भी question है इनका और पहले what kind of checking should be done in case of one time settlement accounts? Sometimes they provide Excel sheets which may not be aligned with the main CBS system. How to check this? Normally we do not check this because one time settlement हुआ वो ऊपर head office level या zonal office जो भी उनकी power hierarchy है उस level पे settle हुआ amount आई और account close हो गया. Close account we normally do not check, but is there any checking available and what kind of checking is there?
So what we need to check in our basically one-time settlement accounts is you need to check the letter of approval which has come for that one-time settlement. Now this account, this settlement letter would provide exactly as to how much the bank is foregoing and how much the customer needs to pay and by what date it has to be paid and whatever terms and conditions are stated in that letter. So what we need to do is to first I told you how to identify all these cases of one-time settlements and compromises, and then verify from the letter whether those terms and conditions have been complied with when the account got settled. So in certain cases, we have found out that they forgot rather than recovering the amount which the customer was required to submit, they have actually foregone a larger percentage just to close down the account. So these kind of issues can arise which you need to address.
And straight away question आ गया sir, what are the important changes in prudential norms as compared to last year and how does it affect our scope of work?
So we'll discuss it, sir.
Yeah.
Now the last thing again which we need to do is about reporting. So please also refer to the accounting policies of the bank, which is very critical. As we told today also I have answered 3 queries which are frankly which came from AASB. So there is a bank audit FAQ. There is an email address which where you can send in your queries, which is actually kept by AASB, and you can get an answer. So I am one of the members who is actually answering queries there for the members.
Can you tell us the email ID, sir?
Bank audit FAQ, BANK audit FAQ @ICAI.org. I'll just check and let you know, sir. So there you can actually send in your queries and they would be answered by a panel which AASB has created. So I am one of those members. So accounting policies of the bank becomes very critical. We need to understand it. So some bank might have a policy of taking locker rent in income on the basis of cash basis, on realization basis. Some bank might have a principle of taking a locker rent on the basis of accrual system of accounting. So unless until you have gone through the accounting policies of the bank, you will not be able to identify how these affect your audit and what kind of activity you may be required to perform. So that you need to check, sir. Okay. Okay. Next, what we need to do, let's move to, before we move to the area of this. So there are certain certificates which are important. So when we do an audit, apart from their balance sheet and P&L and the main statutory audit report and LFAR, we are also required to sign on various certificates. So certificates sometimes, again, we feel that they are system generated, so may not be verified, or the somehow the branch management gives us the idea that these are system generated and there is no manual intervention, and therefore they may not be verified, which is not true, sir. And please understand, our responsibility towards a certificate is much more than in case of an audit report. The certificate are an absolute assurance, true and correct, and wherein our audit reports are basically true and fair, okay, reasonable assurance. So please be careful. Secondly, there is a guidance note of our institute, guidance note on reports or certificates for special purposes, revised 2016 edition. It provides for a format which you can use during the course of your bank audit, especially where you are signing a certificate which you cannot verify 100%, like interest subvention in case of agriculture. Now, you cannot, nobody can actually claim to have been verified at 100%. So this guidance note provides you a format of an audit report, which you can use for the purpose of decreasing your liability from true and correct to true and fair. So it basically says that we have verified and signed this certificate with the intention of giving a trueness view of true and fair view, rather than the true and correct view. So this we can use for the purpose of containing our audit risk as to the some misstatement in these certificates. Okay. Then their interest subvention certificate. In case of export, there are 3 circulars which has come this year. First 2 circular, there was an extension of period for 1 quarter each. So the first circular extended the period up to June. Second circular extended the period up to September. The third circular, which came in March only, what it has done is it has changed the guidelines for interest subvention in case of export. Now the guidelines have changed. Earlier, the interest subvention was 5% for MSME exporters. Now it has been reduced to 3% for MSME manufacturer exporters and 2% for MSME merchant exporters. Okay, and in case of other exporter, it is now only 2%. Earlier, it was 3%. 6 HS lines for telecom instrument sector they have taken out of this interest subvention. And in case the company is claiming any PLI scheme benefit, the production linked incentive scheme which the government of India has, then they are not eligible to avail this interest subvention. And then a credit of exporters account is mandatory before raising a claim. So these are some of the changes. So please remember, up to 30th September, the guidelines are different. From 1st October, the guidelines have changed. Wherever you are certifying such a certificate for export subvention, please ensure that you have gone through the circular and then only sign the certificate. Okay. Then certificate for interest subvention in case of MSME. This was not extended this year, so it was applicable till last year. There is no extension which has come for this year, so we are not going to discuss it. Please remember, there is no extension. You cannot give a certificate this year unless until there is some extension. Interest subvention for agriculture. Satish, do you feel it is important for us?
Anji, please.
Okay. So interest subvention for agriculture, there are 2 interest subvention which are there, 2% and 3%. So people do sometimes I have seen getting confused with this interest subvention. So one, what is 2% interest subvention? So 2% interest subvention is applicable to short-term crop loan up to 3 lakhs per farmer. So any KCC has 2 components in it. Kisan credit card has 2 components. One is the short-term component, which is basically given for crop. And there is a long-term component which is given for the purpose of creating some farm assets, like maybe a sprinkler system or maybe a motor or something. Okay? So it is only applicable to short-term component. Okay, up to 3 lakhs per farmer. So if the loan of the farmer is 5 lakh rupees, it would be only allowed up to 3 lakhs per farmer. Okay. if provided rate of interest at the rate of 7%. So if the farmer is given a loan at the rate of 7%, there would be a 2% interest subvention, which would be given for the period from the date of disbursement till the actual date of repayment or the due date fixed by the bank, whichever is earlier, subject to a maximum period of 1 year. Okay. So does it mean that 7% is the rate offered to the farmer by the bank? Minus 2% interest subvention, 5% would be the net rate to the farmer. Is it right?
Please come again, sir.
So 7% is the rate given by the bank to the farmer. 2% is the interest subvention. 7 minus 2, 5% would be the net rate to the farmer.
No, it won't be.
No. Then Satish, then what it is?
Sir, it would vary because subvention form calculating the subvention is a different formula, not straight away. As you also said, it is up to the date of actual repayment or up to 1 year. If it is not repaid within 1 year, no subvention is given.
Okay. So sir, 2% interest subvention has no such condition of repayment. Please remember, 2% interest subvention only has one condition, which is that the rate interest has been offered at the rate of 7% up to 3 lakhs per farm. And there is a question which has come. Somebody is asking, sir, that in case of KCC limit of 5 lakhs, first 3 lakhs has lower ROI and balance is higher ROI. How to execute document for limit where there are two ROIs? So, sir, in case of bank loan, in case of these farmers loan, they have a system of a tiered rate of interest. So up to 3 lakh, they would provide a rate of interest of 7%. Beyond 3 lakh, they would have a higher rate of interest. Why it is so, sir? Because of this interest subvention itself. Because this interest subvention of 2% is not for the farmer, sir. This interest subvention of 2% is for the bank. So if the bank is providing loan to the farmer at the rate of 7%, they get an income of 2% from the government. So their income is 7% from the farmer, 2% from the government. Farmer gets the loan at the rate of 7%. So that is why there is no other condition except the fact that the loan is provided at the rate of 7%. Is it clear, sir? No? Satish?
Yeah.
Okay. And please remember, Aadhaar linkage has been made mandatory. So wherever you're giving a certificate this time for interest subvention, check how this system of Aadhaar linkage is being maintained by the branches. Okay. Then there is an interest subvention of 3%, where what you said is absolutely correct. So this 3% interest subvention is only applicable in case of prompt repayment. So what is
that
prompt?
2% is not going to the customer, it is going to the bank.
Yes. So it is the income of the bank.
Right.
Okay. So now 3% interest subvention is applicable for prompt repayment. Now what is prompt repayment? It is that whatever due date has been fixed by the bank, the complete payment has been done. Principal plus interest has been repaid by that due date. Then it is considered as a prompt repayment. If you do a prompt repayment up to 3 lakhs per farmer, you get an interest subvention of 3%. This benefit goes to the farmer. So 7% is the rate offered by the bank, 3% is the interest subvention, net rate becomes 4%. Only if you do a prompt repayment. If you don't do a prompt repayment, then of course you will be still charged 7% up to 3 lakhs and a higher rate beyond 3 lakhs. Okay. So this is the concept of 2% and 3%. Now, one more thing, sir.
Yeah, please.
One more thing before I take your question, Satish.
Yeah.
There are two types of KCC in case of a rural branch. Please remember that. There are two master circulars on KCC. One is the master circular on crops and another is the master circular on KCC for animal husbandries and fisheries. So when you go to a rural branch, please do not get confused. Don't just look at KCC and think this KCC means crop loan. Okay, so they are two separate circulars. Both have different guidelines. In case of KCC for animal husbandry and fisheries, usual 90 days norms applies, even for NPS. So the crop season funda do not apply. One. Secondly, the interest subvention is applicable both to KCC for crop loan and KCC for animal husbandries and fisheries. Okay, but the limit is 3 lakhs per farmer only. So suppose a farmer has taken a KCC for 4 lakhs, 2.5 lakhs for crop loan, 1.5 lakhs for animal husbandry. So which part would get the interest subvention? So RBI clarified by saying the crop loan would get the first right Then if there is a balance, it would go to the animal husbandry and fisheries. So 2.5 lakh for crop loan, 50,000 for animal husbandry or fisheries. So, okay. And again, please understand, if you see the second last line here, second last paragraph here, additional 3% for prompt repayment for farmers who repay both short-term crop loan and KCC for animal husbandry fisheries in time. So if you have taken both the KCCs, crop loan also and animal husbandry fisheries also, both have to be repaid on time for the purpose of prompt repayment for 3% interest.
Okay.
Okay. So this we need to remember.
In my information, rather, not the question, what the branches are doing, they are preparing a list of all those KCC accounts, and on a particular date, they just make a debit and a credit, one debit on the same day. Those vouchers, those lists even does not carry the signatures of the borrower, and just they make an entry that these loans are repaid and then given again.
So what we call as a palta basically. So
Yes.
they first deposit cash in the account. They say
No
that the
cash is
account.
deposited. It is just an entry.
So they would show it as a case of cash deposit, and then they would show after 1 minute or 1 hour or whatever that there has been another sanction of the loan and there has been a cash withdrawal.
Yeah.
So sir, in what that cases, what I advise is that you please take out the vouchers for some cases. Check, because cash deposit can be done by anybody. So I may
Yeah.
have taken a loan, Satish ji can go and deposit cash for me. But the cash withdrawal needs my signature from my account. So if they have all those vouchers, generally you will not find. Then in that case,
So this is a list. जैसे पहले मैनुअल उसमें इंटरेस्ट की कैलकुलेशन हम चेक करते थे, पूरी लिस्ट बनती थी, एक लेजर की पूरी लिस्ट है, वो लिस्ट साथ में वाउचर के साथ अटैच हो जाती है, इसमें किसी बोरोवर के किसी के भी साइन नहीं है.
So then you don't need to accept. Then you cannot accept it.
Yeah.
Then it is a case of evergreening of loan, which you
Yes.
are not required to accept. Okay. And for interest subvention for agriculture, sir, again, I request you to first ask for the worksheet from the branch. Because without having the worksheet, you will not be able to decide whether the interest subvention certificate is right or wrong. Because it is not that there are 5 accounts that you calculate interest subvention for 5 accounts and then total it up and you know the total interest subvention. There are thousands of accounts. So please ask for the worksheet and please verify. Try and take it in soft copy, verify it in soft copy itself, convert it into an Excel file, which we have been doing, and then verify it, sir. So this is very critical, sir. Okay. Now, emergency credit line guarantee scheme, this came last year, sir. Now, the last year scheme they have renamed as ECLGS 1.0. Now we are sitting on ECLGS 4.0. So there are 4 schemes which has come: 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. So please be guided with the whatever changes have happened. The scheme has now been extended up to 31st March 2023, sir. Recently, only a few days back, the scheme got extended up to 31st March 2023. And what is very important, why I'm telling you this, about the scheme is, in case an account which was given under ECLGS becomes an NPA, then there was a requirement of doing a reporting of that NPA to NCGTC, which is the body which is giving that guarantee, within 90 days. Sir. A lot of banks have not done it. So what they did was they issued a letter to all banks saying that we are giving you a one-time relaxation in reporting of NPAs. If you are not done within 90 days, please do the reporting now. That scheme was applicable till October 1st, 2021, sir. If the bank have done a late reporting, what they have done is that we are allowing you to do a late reporting as a one-time measure. But in that case, say the loan amount was 1 lakh, the guarantee was 1 lakh, the guarantee would reduce by 1.5% as a penalty. So rather than having a guarantee of 1 lakh now, it would get reduced by 1.5 lakh. So to that extent, the amount of that loan may become unsecured. Sir. Please be careful. Right? So this is a letter which has gone this year. And if they have also failed to report after 90 days and they have not done it by October 1st also, then that guarantee itself is called to question. So please be careful in case of ECLGS account, especially where there is an NPA, that whether the reporting has been correctly done to the NCGTC or not, sir.
सर ये लेटर मिल जाएगा सर?
बिल्कुल सर, मैं आपको अभी दिखा भी देता हूँ, अगर आपको देखना है तो एक सेकेंड, I'll have to एक सेकेंड रुकिएगा सर. Now I think you will be able to see, sir. This is a letter which has gone, sir. Are you able to see, sir?
Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If you see here, it says, please note that in all such NPA accounts which are reported on the ECLGS portal with the delay, reduction from claim amount to the extent of 1.5% as penalty will be charged. And this facility was up to October 31st, 2021. If they have not done it till October 31st itself, then there would be a problem in getting a claim itself from NCGTC. So that is a very important thing which we need to keep in mind while doing our audit this time.
And now the important question is, these cases, ECL, GCS cases, are they also governed by the same norms of NPA classification?
Yeah, they are governed by the same norms. So there is a confusion. I remember, I don't want to tell you about that confusion and then tell you a clarification, but please believe me that they are governed by the same norms. So they do not have any special dispensation as far as loans are concerned.
कई बार ये जो लोन्स हैं ECL, GCS के, वो लोन भी गलत दे देंगे. उसमें कुछ जैसे फर्स्ट था 28 Feb 20 को account should be standard, then only 20% of the outstanding as on 28th of
In
Feb
case
was to be
the
given.
compliance of the conditions are not done at the time of grant of the loan itself, sir, then they are not actually covered by the guarantee itself. So the condition should be strictly met at the time, because when you will go for a claim, sir, from NCGTC, I'm sure they would actually verify every detail. And in case any such details do not match, they would refuse to give you the claim.
सर इसमें बोरोर के सिग्नेचर भी मैंडेटरी थे, उसकी कंसेंट मैंडेटरी थी, पर कई बार कंसेंट नहीं ली और उसको डिसबर्स कर दिया, बाद में उसने फिर रिपेंट किया तो फिर वो वापस कर दिया. ऐसा भी केसेस बड़े सारे हुए हैं.
So this becomes important, sir.
Yeah. और एक मैसेज आया सर, this recording, we are recording this session. This recording will be sent through our broadcast list to all.
Anyways, now the advances, now classification of advances, it comes to, there are three classifications. One is a sector-wise classification, priority and non-priority. Then there is a security-wise classification, which is secured by tangible assets, unsecured and secured by guarantee. And there is a quality-wise, so standard and NPA. And standard, we have standard normal, SMA. SMA is 0, 1 and 2. Then NPA, we have substandard, doubtful. Doubtful, again, we have D1, D2, D3, and a loss asset. So if you change any of those, you change sector, you change security, you change quality, it would require MOC. So sometimes we are not aware that we think that only when we make an account in NPA, then only MOC is required. MOC is required in case we change any of the classifications. Okay, so it directly impacts the basically the balance.
सर इसमें यहाँ पे एक इंफॉर्मेशन मैं देना चाहूंगा मेंबर्स को जरूर. Normally there are number of loan accounts with the branch, and we look at the few as a test check or the mandatory requirement. But if we look at the full advance list, there are normally, the list is normally the priority sector and then non-priority sector. And if you go to non-priority sector, is very minimal, 3, 10, 20, 15 pages out of 1000 pages or 80 pages. So if you look at least the non-priority one, you'll find certain cases which should be priority but are reflected in non-priority. Those you can always give MOC in priority, non-priority cases. Then in non-priority cases also, most of them they should be classified as secured, unsecured. वहाँ भी बहुत गलती मिलती है. तो आपकी कम से कम 30-40-50 MOC तो सिर्फ उसकी लिस्ट को सिर्फ देखने से बन जाती है कि वो कौन सी स्कीम का लोन है, वो सिक्योर्ड होना चाहिए, अनसिक्योर्ड होना चाहिए, या कौन सी क्लासिफिकेशन में आना चाहिए, which we normally avoid doing.
So Satish, I think जो आपने security की बात की ना, so very important is that security needs to be the realizable value of the security.
Yes.
what we have seen in the banks is that there is a technical issue that they put a security at the time of sanction of the loan and then they don't revise the value. Now, especially in case of depreciable assets, it becomes very critical for us to revise the value of the security. Because when we change the value of the security, it would one result into a MOC. In case the account is an NPA, then the provision itself would change because the security has been changed. So it becomes very critical that we analyze and record the correct value of the security in each case. Okay. Now NPA, sir, and as somebody directed us to actually talk about the recent changes. So there were 3 circulars which came, sir. So earlier there was a circular which came in 2015, the master circular on IRAC advances. That was the circular which was going on till now. So October 1, 2021, they issued a new master circular on IRAC advances. Rather, they renamed IRAC as IRACP, Income Recognition, Asset Classification and Provision. Okay, so now it is not IRAC, actually it is IRACP norms. Okay, then there were 2 clarifications which came on November 12, 2021 and Feb 15, 2022. So these are the 3 circulars which are important. Or you can refer to a circular which has come on April 1, 2022, sir, very recently. So April 1, 2022, there is a new master circular on IRACP norms, sir, which has included all these 3 circulars, whatever changes were there, and a single consolidated master circular has come. So you can actually refer to that April 1 circular for the purpose of understanding. Okay, so what changes have been done? Let us get into it. So NPA in case of term loans first. So what is in case, how an NPA is decided in case of term loan is interest and or installment of principal remains overdue for a period more than 90 days. The word here is more than 90 days. Okay, interest and principal, interest or principal, interest. So it can be interest and principal both. It can be either interest, it can be either principal, it can be both also. So anyways, remains overdue for a period of more than 90 days. Okay, so more than 90 days. What is the concept of overdue? So they say overdue is any amount due to the bank under any credit facility is overdue if it is not paid on the due date fixed by the bank. Okay. So suppose the due date of a loan is 31st December 2021. When is the account going to become overdue? Anybody? When is the account going to become overdue, sir?
मैंने सुना नहीं सर, मैं बीच में फोन आ गया था.
अच्छा, सतीश. So I was saying कि in case of a term loan, the account becomes an NPA after being overdue for more than 90 days. Now, what is the concept of overdue? This is any amount due to the bank under any credit facility is overdue if it is not paid on the due date fixed by the bank. So if suppose there was an installment which was due on 31st December, if it is not paid on 31st December, the due date, when this account will become overdue?
रजनीश जी का कहना है कि it will become on 31st December itself.
31st December or 1st January. That's the main point. So RBI clarified. So there was a confusion till last year, but RBI clarified this time. What they said was, borrow account shall be flagged as overdue by the lending institutions at part of their day-end process for the due date, irrespective of the time of running such process. So this time पे bank would run their day-end process. Till that point of time, if the amount is not received, the account would become overdue on the same day itself. So the bank would mark the account as overdue on the same day itself. Okay. And they have given example. So what example they gave? Due date of loan account. They said, suppose is 31st March 2021. Full dues not received by the lending institution runs the day-end process for this date. Date of overdue is 31st March 2021 itself. Okay. And NPA date they have said is 29 June 2021. So if we calculate 29 days of June, 31 days of May, 30 days of April. These are 90. We require more than 90. So where is that one day? that is 31st March 2021, because the account became an overdue on 31st March. So that would be the first day. So it becomes 91 days on 29 June. The account would become an NPA on 29 June 2020. Okay. So this is a circular which has come very importantly. Okay. Next point is bank should classify an account as NPA. So this is a very important concept. What this concept says, it says that NPA. Now, let me take you a bit to a history to make you understand this. So earlier, what used to happen was the interest used to be levied to the borrower account on quarterly basis. Now, then the bank RBI allowed the interest to be levied on a monthly basis. But this quarter concept actually kept on running from that point of time. So what RBI says, say the interest is getting debited on 31st October, 30th November, they do not become due till the end of the quarter, till 31st December. Okay. So if you are not paid the interest of October, you have not paid the interest of November, because they become due only on 31st December, the account would become overdue if not paid on 31st December only. This is called as a quarter concept. Where it is applicable to cases where there is a moratorium on payment of principal amount and only interest is being paid. Then only it is applicable. If both, it is a case of a EMI loan, you are required to pay EMIs, or you are paying both principal as well as interest, then this concept has no applications. Okay, it is only applicable where there is a moratorium on payment of principal and you are paying interest. Okay, now this concept they are changing, sir. This concept they are changing, but they are changing from next year, sir. This year, this quarter concept would continue, sir. Okay, so what they say is, in case of interest payment in respect of term loans, an account will be classified as NPA if the interest applied at specified interest remains overdue for more than 90 days. So 31st October, you are required to pay interest. You have not paid, it would become overdue on 31st October, and 90 days later, it would become an NPA. But this is applicable from next year, sir. This year, the same quarter concept continues, sir. Okay.
So, which means 31st October interest debited not paid, 30th November interest debited not paid, 31st December interest debited, and if it is not paid the entire October, November, and December, it would become NPA.
It will become overdue on 31st December.
Overdue on
would
31st
require
December.
another 90 days for the account to slip into NPA.
So 29th of March, it will become 31st of March, it will become
31st March, it will become an
NPA, because March is 90 days only.
Right.
March quarter, yeah.
Yes. Okay, sir. Is it
Yeah.
clear? Okay. But again, clarifying, next year it is going to change. This year it remains the same, and it is applicable only to cases where there is a moratorium on payment of principal amount and only interest is required to be paid.
So in that case, this is applicable this year also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now, one thing they have again clarified, which is I think a very, very welcome clarification which they have given. They have directed the banks. Now, what is the problem, sir? Suppose there is a car loan which is given on 12th October. Okay. Now, the agreement says you have to start making payment for EMIs after 1 month of the loan. Now, that 1 month means now 11th November is the due date for payment of loan. Or is it 12th November or 15th November or 30th November? We don't know. Okay. Now they have said that the agreement should provide the exact due date for repayment of the loan, frequency of repayment, breakup between principal and interest, examples of SMA NPA classification with dates. In case of moratorium, exact date of commencement of repayment. Mandatory as a choice. हाँ, so 1st जनवरी 2022 से तो जितने एग्रीमेंट्स हैं उसके अंदर ये सब चीजें होनी चाहिए. जो पुराने लोन्स हैं उनका जब रिव्यू या रिन्यूअल होगा उस टाइम पे आपको ये सारे एलिमेंट्स इनकॉर्पोरेट. ठीक है. मुझे नहीं लगता किसी भी बैंक ने 100% किया होगा, तो आपके लिए LFAR के लिए रेडीमेड पॉइंट तैयार होगा.
अभी तो नहीं लगता किया है किसी ने.
तो आपके लिए LFAR के लिए रेडीमेड पॉइंट है.
राइट सर.
ठीक है.
And this was slide number
So slide number 39. Sir.
39, right.
Okay. Now NPA overdraft cash credit. ठीक है, अब इसमें कहते हैं account remains out of order in respect of an overdraft cash credit. What is an out of order concept? Out of order के अंदर दो हिस्से होते हैं, ठीक है. Outstanding balance remain continuously in excess of the sanction limit drawing power for 90 days. यहाँ पे more than नहीं, यहाँ पे for है, ठीक है. Okay. अब इसमें drawing power becomes important. We know what is the issue there. तो ड्राइंग पावर के दो हिस्से हैं, एक तो करेक्ट कैलकुलेशन ऑफ द ड्राइंग पावर एंड अपडेशन ऑफ द ड्राइंग पावर इन द सिस्टम. क्योंकि अगर अपडेशन नहीं हो रही ना सर, तो आपका जो ऑटोमेटेड प्रोसेस की हमने बात की थी वो फेल हो जाएगा, ठीक है. तो कैलकुलेशन 1, अपडेशन 2. उसके अंदर हमें पता है कि जी वो स्टॉक स्टेटमेंट पूरी नहीं आती, एक फिगर लिखी होती है, क्रेडिटर्स की फिगर नहीं लिखी होती, कैलकुलेशन में जानबूझ के गलतियां की जाती हैं. तो वो सब इश्यूज हमें पता है. Do a correct calculation and check for updation in the system. That is very critical. दूसरा इसमें होता है सर कि हो सकता है आपका बैलेंस तो विद इन लिमिट ही चल रहा है, बट देयर नो क्रेडिट्स कंटिन्यूअसली फॉर 90 डेज. यहाँ पे एक वर्ड आता है सर, एज ऑन द डेट ऑफ बैलेंस शीट, और क्रेडिट्स आर नॉट इनफ टू कवर द इंटरेस्ट डेबिटेड ड्यूरिंग द सेम पीरियड. अभी जो वर्ड आता था ना सर, डेट ऑफ बैलेंस शीट, इससे कंफ्यूजन क्रिएट होती थी. बैंक्स यूज्ड टू क्लेम कि भाई डेट ऑफ बैलेंस शीट है 31 मार्च. तो आप 31 मार्च से पीछे देखो 90 डेज, उससे पहले कुछ भी हो रहा था सीसी अकाउंट में, वो आपकी प्रॉब्लम नहीं, ठीक है. वी डू नॉट यूज टू एग्री, बट इट वाज क्रिएटिंग अ लॉट ऑफ इश्यूज. अब इन्होंने इसको चेंज कर दिया सर 12 नवंबर से, और क्या किया इन्होंने, जो वर्ड था डेट ऑफ बैलेंस शीट, इसको हटा दिया. अब इन्होंने क्या कहा, द आउटस्टैंडिंग बैलेंस इन द सीसीओडी अकाउंट इज लेस देन द सैंक्शन लिमिट ड्राइंग पावर, but there are no credit continuously for 90 days. The outstanding balance in the CCOD account is less than the sanction limit drawing power, but credits are not enough to cover the interest debited during the previous 90-day period. तो इन्हें जो रेफरेंस लगाया था बैलेंस शीट डेट से, वो हटा दिया. प्रॉब्लम क्या सर, आपकी बात चैलेंज हमारे लिए, बैंक के लिए भी और हमारे लिए भी है. Now what RBI is moving to is the daily marking of NPAs. बैंक्स क्या करते हैं सर, जनरली मार्किंग ऑफ एनपीए इज डन जनरली एट आइदर अ क्वार्टरली लेवल, क्वार्टर एंड पे करते हैं, या बहुत कोई इंसिस्टेंट है तो मंथली कर लेता है. नाउ व्हाट आरबीआई इज एक्सपेक्टिंग द बैंक्स टू डू इज टू डू अ एनपीए मार्किंग ऑन अ डेली बेसिस, एंड सिमिलरली द ऑडिटर्स टू वेरीफाई द एनपीए मार्किंग ऑन अ डेली बेसिस. इट इज गोइंग टू बी अ चैलेंज. बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है आपकी बार हमारे लिए ऑडिट के अंदर, तो ये डेली मार्किंग.
This is going to be a challenge for concurrent auditors much.
So concurrent auditors have the luxury of time, sir, and they are looking at small units month. We are looking at a whole unit of a year, and we don't have the luxury of time, so that becomes sometimes an issue also. Right. Okay.
Sir, उसको एग्जांपल से समझाने कुछ कंफ्यूजन जरूर रहेगा इसको.
सर अब इसमें ना मेन चीज क्या है कि अब ना आपको पहले हम देखते थे 31 मार्च से पीछे देखते थे 90, तो 1 मार्च टू 31 मार्च देखते थे. अब आपको कोई भी पीरियड, कंटिन्यूअस पीरियड ऑफ 90 डेज में अकाउंट एनपीए में स्लिप कर सकता है, क्योंकि उन्होंने
12 नवंबर 21 के बाद ही देखना ना सर. 12 नवंबर 21 से पहले वाला पीरियड तो नहीं देखना.
नहीं, उससे नहीं पहले देखना.
तो इसका मतलब अभी जो हम पहले देखते थे 1 जनवरी टू 31 मार्च, अब उसको 12 नवंबर टू 31 मार्च देखना है. अब उसमें अगर पूरे 90 डेज में, और इसमें भी ये जो 12 नवंबर से है, आउटस्टैंडिंग बैलेंस इज लेस देन द सैंक्शन लिमिट की बात करें, जहां कंटिन्यूअसली ओवरड्रान है वो तो 90 डेज
भी सेम है सर, उसमें कोई चेंज है,
उसमें कोई चेंज नहीं है. जहां बैलेंस से कम है, मतलब लिमिट से कम है, डीपी और सैंक्शन लिमिट से कम है, बट कोई क्रेडिट नहीं है या एनफ नहीं है क्रेडिट्स टू कवर द डेबिट्स, तो हमें 12 नवंबर से देखना है.
बिल्कुल.
और एनी कंटिन्यूअस 90 डेज, मे बी फ्रॉम 12 नवंबर टिल 90 और 14 नवंबर टिल 90, तो हमारा पीरियड थोड़ा सा 3 महीने प्लस 1.5 मंथ और बढ़ गया ऑलमोस्ट.
ये तो बढ़ ही गया. और थोड़ा सा ना हमारा इसमें क्या होता था, थिंकिंग जो होती है ना, बैलेंस शीट डेट को हम इस तरीके से एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते थे, क्योंकि बैलेंस शीट तो हर एक क्वार्टर पे भी बनती है बैंक की.
हाँ जी.
तो हम इसको कंसेप्ट को उस तरीके से एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते थे, बट नाउ ऑफ कोर्स उन्होंने कंफ्यूजन को खत्म ही कर दिया. तो आपको अब आर्ग्यूमेंट भी खत्म हो गया ब्रांच का, अगर कोई आर्ग्यूमेंट भी था तो दैट इज नाउ फिनिश्ड ऑफ।
यू
अब
मीन टू
इसमें
से कि अगर 31 दिसंबर को भी वो एनपीए इस आउट ऑफ ऑर्डर आता था तो एज ऑन 31 दिसंबर हम उसे एनपीए ट्रीट करके आगे चलते थे।
बिल्कुल सर, हम करते थे,
करते ही
पर
थे।
वो थोड़ा सा आर्ग्यूमेंट करते थे, वो आर्ग्यूमेंट भी उन्होंने खत्म कर दिया, मतलब उसमें कोई आर्ग्यूमेंट के लिए भी स्कोप नहीं बचा।
पर अगर उसमें अभी उसी बात के लिए जो ब्रांच की तरफ से आर्गुमेंट आएंगे ही, डेफिनेटली अभी भी आएंगे कि एज ऑन 31 मार्च तो 90 डेज में, मतलब चलो हमने 12 नवंबर से लिया, 90 डेज हुए रफली जाके जनवरी में कोई फेब में कोई डेट में जाके, पर उसके बाद वो क्लियर हो गया।
सॉरी सर, वो कुछ और आए जा रहा था।
12 नवंबर से जब हम देखेंगे तो कहीं फैब की 9, 10, 12 मिनिमम 9th ऑफ फैब को जाके अगर हम डिसीजन लेते हैं कि भाई एनपी हो गया, आउट ऑफ ऑर्डर हो गया, पर ब्रांचेस का आएगा ठीक है जी 9th ऑफ फैब को तो आउट ऑफ ऑर्डर था, पर उसके बाद सफिशिएंट क्रेडिट्स आ रहे हैं, उसके बाद बैलेंस भी है, इंटरेस्ट भी रिकवर हो गया, सब कुछ, तो अब एज ऑन 31 मार्च नहीं है, उसका क्या करना है?
तो देखिए, अगर कोई अकाउंट एनपीए होता है ना, एंड इफ दैट अकाउंट जिस वजह से एनपीए हुआ, इफ दैट थिंग इज टेकन केयर कि भाई मेरी इंस्टॉलमेंट नहीं आ रही थी, उसने इंस्टॉलमेंट पे कर दी,
हाँ जी।
मेरा अकाउंट ओवर ड्यू चल रहा था, बियॉन्ड द सैंक्शन लिमिट चल रहा था, वो सैंक्शन लिमिट के विद इन आ गया, तो इन एनी केस द अकाउंट कैन बी अपग्रेडेड, so the
राइट।
account would downgrade and then get upgraded, so there is no problem with that. The only thing which we need to verify, जैसे मैंने कहा कि भाई ये जेन्युइन होना चाहिए, ऐसा ना हो कि उसने लिमिट ही बढ़ा दी कि लो जी कि मैं वो नीचे नहीं आ पा रहा तो मैंने उसको ऊपर कर दिया, ऐसा ना हो, या पता चला जी कि नॉन जेन्युइन क्रेडिट्स आ रहे हैं, किसी और अकाउंट से पैसा घुमा के लिया है, तो इस तरह के बहुत सारे इश्यूज हैं जो हम सब अवेयर हैं, तो वो उस चीजों का हम ध्यान रखें।
राइट सर। और ये सिर्फ सीसी और ओडी के केसेस में है ये वाला?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, ठीक है।
सर
Next, which we need to see is NPAs in case of bill purchase discounting. इसमें the concept is bill remains overdue for a period more than 90 days. Again यहाँ पे word जो है more than 90 days है। अब इसमें important ये आता है सर कि more than 90 days के लिए पहले वही कि due कौन सी date है, तो bill purchase और bill discounting के बीच में फर्क क्या है? It becomes important. तो bill purchase क्या है? Side bills are purchased sir. यूजान्स बिल्स आर डिस्काउंटेड। साइड बिल्स क्या होते हैं? जो इमीडिएट पेमेंट होनी होती है, जिनमें वो साइड बिल कहते हैं, या पेमेंट एट साइड कहते हैं उनको, है ना, बिल से। हाँ जी। और यूजान्स के अंदर देयर इज अ क्रेडिट पीरियड एंड देन आफ्टर द एक्सपायरी ऑफ द क्रेडिट पीरियड ओनली द पेमेंट वुड कम। Why I am telling you this, sir? We have seen cases where wrong due dates are fed into the system, or the due dates are modified so that वो, क्योंकि ड्यू डेट के बाद ओवर ड्यू होगा और ओवर ड्यू के बाद वो 90 डेज चाहिए, तो सिस्टम में ड्यू डेट्स को चेंज कर देता है, तो वी शुड बी नोइंग हाउ ड्यू डेट्स आर कैलकुलेटेड केस ऑफ अ बिल परचेज बिल डिस्काउंट, ठीक है। देन वी हैव सीन केसेस सर, एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कंसेप्ट है, एक मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ। एक अकाउंट है, उसकी से सीसी लिमिट 1 करोड़ रुपए की है, अकाउंट इज फुल्ली यूटिलाइज्ड, मंथ एंड पे इंटरेस्ट लगता है, अकाउंट गोज बियॉन्ड द सैंक्शन लिमिट, देन देयर इज अ रिकवरी व्हिच कम्स एंड द अकाउंट गेट्स रेगुलराइज्ड। ये मैं आपको प्रैक्टिकली बता रहा हूँ, ये हमारे साथ हुआ ऐसा केस, ठीक है। उसकी अकाउंट में 2 करोड़ की लिमिट थी, इस तरह से अकाउंट चल रहा था, उसकी बिल परचेज की भी लिमिट थी। एक उन्होंने बिल परचेज किया सर 1 दिसंबर में, उसकी ड्यू डेट थी, पेमेंट नहीं आई। एक बिल उन्होंने परचेज किया 1 फरवरी में, उसकी भी पेमेंट नहीं आई थी। तो 1 दिसंबर वाला बिल था, वो 90 डेज के बियॉन्ड हो रहा था, तो बैंक ने किसी तरह फॉलो अप कर करा के वो 31 मार्च को वो पेमेंट लिया है उस बिल की। Now what they told us कि सर देखिए ये वाला पेमेंट तो आ गया, ठीक है, चाहे लेट आया पर आ गया, तो ये अकाउंट एनपीए नहीं है, ये बिल परचेज। 1 फरवरी वाले को भी 90 डेज हुए नहीं है, सीसी अकाउंट मेरा थोड़ा सा टाइट चल रहा है बट एनपीए नहीं है। वी टोल्ड देम दैट दिस इज एन एनपीए। तो हमने किस बेसिस पे बताया? क्योंकि देयर इज आरबीआई फंडा, वो क्या कहता है कि सर अगर आपने बिल परचेज डिस्काउंट किया, ड्यू डेट पे पेमेंट नहीं आई, the payment has to be recovered from the operative account of the customer, तो वो सीसी अकाउंट को डेबिट करना। 1 दिसंबर को सीसी अकाउंट को डेबिट करते हैं, फिर 1 फरवरी को बिल परचेज किया, नहीं आया, सीसी अकाउंट को डेबिट करिए, 31 मार्च को आप 1 दिसंबर वाले की पेमेंट लिया है उसको क्रेडिट कर दीजिए सीसी अकाउंट को. Now look at the CC account. You will realize the CC account is overdrawn from 1st December till
31st
31st March.
March.
So that means the account would slip into NPA. तो कई बार हम देखते हैं सर वो एक डिवॉल्वमेंट अकाउंट बना के अलग से खड़ा कर लेते हैं just to save the account from becoming NPA. So we should be aware of this principle of RBI and calculate NPAs keeping this in mind. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this we have already discussed. NP agriculture कर लेते हैं sir. Then I think we'll open it for discussion on any question answers. I think agriculture advances creates a lot of issues. तो अब हम practically समझते हैं क्या करना है. पहली चीज सर, आप एक रूरल ब्रांच में ऑडिट करने गए, पहली चीज आती है सर वहां पे केसीसी है. केसीसी मैंने आपको बता दिया अब 2 तरह के, केसीसी फॉर क्रॉप लोन, केसीसी फॉर एनिमल हस्बेंड्रीज एंड फिशरीज. ठीक है. सो I have already told you KCC for animal husbandry and fishery goes as per the 90 days law, not as per the crop season which we are going to discuss. Okay. अब उसके बाद there are other loans also. There might be a term loan given to for purchase of car or maybe purchase of a house, or there may be a CC limit given to somebody selling cloth in a local shop there, or maybe a petrol pump which has a which is operating outside the branch itself. So these kind of accounts are also there. So whether they would also enjoy this crop loan funda, if not, so which account would have the application of crop loan and which would not have the application of crop loan. So we have jewel loans also. So I am going to a branch in Tamil Nadu which has a lot of jewel loans. So jewel loans can, whether they would be as per the crop loan funda. So there is a confusion. So for that, please refer to Annexure 2, giving the list of farm credits. This is given in the October 1, 2021 circular also, and it was given in that July 1, 2015 circular also. So whichever loan fall in the list of farm credits as per that Annexure 2 would get the benefit of this crop season. If they do not fall in this list of Annexure 2, they would not get the benefit of crop season. First thing. Secondly, now I am not an agriculturist. Most of us would not have done any kind of agriculture activity. So I really don't know what kind of crops are grown into the area. Now I really don't know what kind of crops are grown in Tamil Nadu, in the area I am visiting. When they are sown, when they are harvested. So there would be a SLBC circular, State Level Bankers Committee. There will be a circular which would tell you which crops are grown, when they are sown, when they are harvested, what is the crop season basically, and what is the scale of finance. So how much time it would require, how much finance the bank would give for any crop which you are trying to grow. Okay. Now why it is so important? In case it is a long duration crop. Long duration crop means which has a crop season of more than 1 year, or there might be a short duration crop which has a which is not a long duration crop, so which has a crop season up to 1 year. Okay. NPA in case of short duration crops only become after, in case the installment of principal or interest either thereon remains overdue for 2 crop seasons. In case of long duration, it is 1 crop season. So we'll understand it practically how it actually happens. So this is the illustration which is also part of our guidance note of our institute on statutory audit of banks. I was part of the team which was revising the guidance note last year, and I included this illustration. Then I was revising the chapter on agriculture advances. So they have continued in this year also with some change in rate section. So let us understand how this actually happens. So we have a sanction date from April to September, October to March. Now harvesting date is September and March. So there are 2 crops. One is Kharif, one is Rabi. Okay. Now what happens in case of crops loan is, in case of farmers, what RBI says is that because the crop has been harvested does not mean the farmer would be able to repay. So he has to do some post-harvest activities, go and sell the crop in the market, and then only he will realize money which he can use for repayment. So you have to give him some additional time for repayment. So Generally, banks give 3 to 6 months for repayment. I have assumed 3 months. So September crop got harvested. 31st December 2019 is the due date fixed by the bank. Here the crop got harvested in March. So 30th June 2020 is the date fixed by the bank for repayment. Is it clear, sir? Up till now?
Right, sir. Yes, sir.
Now the interest subvention of 3% would only be given if you repay by 31st December or 30th June. Okay. Now, in case the repayment of principal on interest is not done fully by 31st December, the account will become irregular on 31st December 2019, overdue, or 30th June 2020. Now, this is overdue. 2 crop seasons are required for making the account as an NPA. Now, the first crop season would end on. So, when would the next crop come? So, he is not paid here. Next crop would come on March 2020 after 6 months, and additional 3 months would be given for repayment. So 30th June 2020 would be first crop season end date. Okay. Now he is not paid by this also. Next crop would come in September 2020. 3 months the bank would give for repayment. So 31st December 2020 would be the second crop season end date. In case he does not repay by 31st December 2020, the account would slip into NPA. So it is taking nearly 21 months for the account to become an NPA from the date of disbursement. Is it clear, Satish?
Right, sir.
So
normally they take it to 3 years.
So this is the
extended
reason.
to 3 years.
This is the reason, sir, we created this illustration. And why I'm telling you this is part of the guidance note, because my interpretation of something is my interpretation. I am not RBI. I am not somebody who is a whose words mean something apart from my interpretation of it. Now this is part of your guidance note of your institute. When it comes as part of the guidance note of the institute, then it has some authoritative value.
Yes.
So wherever you find a difficulty in convincing the branch, in convincing the bank, you can show them the guidance note, tell them that this is our guidance note. We are under an obligation to work as per the guidance note given by the institute. Okay, is it clear, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is how, in case of agriculture advances, it happens. Now, just to understand a long-term loan also. So sugarcane. Okay, so October 2018, we sanctioned. December 2019, so 1 year and 3 months we have taken as the harvesting period. Repayment due date was fixed as 31st March, so 3 months was given for repayment. If he does not pay, the account becomes irregular on 31st March 2020. Now the next crop would arrive on, whether it would arrive on December 2021, and 3 months would be given. So 31st March 2022 would be the first crop season end date. It is a long-term crop, so only one crop season has to be given. So if no repayment is received by 31st March 2022, the account would slip into NPA on 31st March 2022. Is it clear, sir?
Right, sir. Right, sir.
So
again, period of 21 months.
No, sir, it takes actually a longer period. 2018, 6 months, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So it takes much longer period, sir.
Yes, yes. So actually it is for long term, but branches and even the regional office and all, even zone office, they treat the auditors nahi ye abhi nahi hua 3 saal lagte hain MP होने में agriculture.
So this is the reason, sir. You can refer to your guidance note, tell them to look at our guidance note of our institute, and tell them this is the guidance which we have received from our institute. So unless until you are able to give me any reason why I should not follow that guidance, I'll have to follow the guidance note.
Sir, as you have prepared this guidance note, I mean, you are the part of the team. Can you let us know the two things? One is whether this guidance note is readily, I know it's readily available online. We can download the guidance note, and which page, if you remember correctly.
So it is divided into chapters. If you look at, there is a part A and part B of the guidance. So part A is for basically the central secretary auditors. Part B is basically for this these branch auditors.
Yeah.
Part B, please refer to the agriculture advances area. So
Right.
there is a separate chapter for audit in agriculture branches. That you refer to. There is this illustration which I am showing you is part of that.
So I just purposefully asked this question so that members listening to our and those who will go to YouTube and listen it may find it easier to find this particular table.
Right. Right, sir. So this is there. Last thing before I close, I know maybe I'm taking a bit more time, but the last thing which I want to cover, sir, is sometimes when we go for an NPA identification in case of banks, in case of agriculture advances, they tell us, "Hey, sir, there was a natural calamity, and that is why the account may not be classified as an NPA."
Yeah.
So what is that circular of natural calamities? We need to understand. So there is a master circular, master direction, which is there specifically for this. It lists out 12 types of natural calamities, which are covered. So what is the benefit of a restructuring under natural calamity is that the basic rule of restructuring is that if you restructure an account, it becomes an NPA just because the account has been restructured. Okay, you don't have to prove anything. You have to just prove the account is restructured. Because it has been restructured, it becomes an NPA. Okay, now there are 4 exceptions to the rule. One is restructuring under natural calamities, where even when you do a restructuring, the account does not slip into NPA category. Second is projects under implementation. Like projects under implementation means like you are creating an hospital. So these are called as a project loan. So during the phase of construction, you only ask for the repayment of principal, repayment of interest, and after the commencement of the commercial operation, they say it as DCCO, date of commencement of commercial operations, then the principal repayment starts. So in case there is a delay in completion of the project, you will have to shift the date of that repayment of principal also. So that amounts to a restructuring. But if it is done within the timelines given in the circular, then that even when you do a restructuring, the account would still remain as a standard category. Third is restructuring for MSME. So there is a separate circular for it. We have been seeing that for 5 years. This year also there are 2 circulars which has come in relation to that. And there is another circular which came last year, which has been extended for this year, which is restructuring for due to COVID relief. So these are the 4 exceptions to the basic rule that if you restructure an account, it slips into NPA. Okay.
If you restructure, it will be classified as NPA.
But in these 4 cases, it does not become an NPA.
But sir, there was a circular, I think, almost 7-8 years back, which says first restructuring is allowed and you will not this classification will not be changed from standard to NPA. But then it was rechanged that second some confusion was there at that time.
So there was a concept of a repeated restructuring earlier.
Which
So
one?
earlier, in certain cases, the restructuring was allowed. But if you do a second restructuring, then it was called as a repeated restructuring.
Yes, yes.
Then the exception does not apply in such cases. That rules have changed. Now, in all cases, if you do a restructuring, the account slips. These are the 4 exceptions, and there are 2 other exceptions which are there, which is when there is a change in the promoter.
Okay.
And there is another restructuring when there is a change in the project outlay. And that project outlay change is not due to increase in the cost, it is due to increase in the, say, you were allowed to do 70% coverage. Later on, the rules change and you are allowed to do, say, now 90% coverage of the area. And you have increased your project outlay. Then in that case also they have given an exception. But otherwise, in all cases, if you do a restructuring, the account slips into NPA categories.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, sir.
Okay. So this is one of the circulars which is applicable to agriculture, which is applicable where you do a restructuring due to natural calamity. Okay. So they cover
for this certain certificate from some authority of the state is available.
So what is the basic requirement? I'll explain. So it covers only 12 types of natural calamities. COVID is not covered here. Okay. Now they say who will declare there is a natural calamity? So they say only central or state government can declare there is a natural calamity. how much loss was there due to natural calamity, what portion of the state was covered in the natural calamity, state level bankers committee or district consultative committee would declare. So you have to go through that circular, and all these circulars are uploaded on a natural calamities portal of the Reserve Bank of India. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what is the basic condition for applying this circular is that the crop loss assessed should be 33% or more. So that circular should say that the loss of crops is more than 33%. If it is less than 33%, say it says that the crop loss is only 25%, then you cannot give any benefit under that circular. Okay. And then restructuring should be completed within a period of 3 months unless the period is extended by Reserve Bank of India. So restructuring again would mean that you have changed the terms and condition in the system. You have issued a revised terms and condition letter to the borrower and the borrowers have agreed to it. Just saying.
दोबारा से बता देना ये.
So restructuring means.
ये 33% वाला और 50% वाला.
तो सर जो ये circular आता है, it tells you how much loss is there. So they go on the ground, they assess how much loss of crop is there. If that circular says that the crop loss is say 25%,
right?
Then you can do a restructuring, but there is no benefit under this circular.
It will be NPA then.
It would be NPA.
Okay.
Okay. Or secondly, there is restructuring should be completed within a period of 3 months. So restructuring involves you change the modify the terms and condition in the system, CBS system. You issue a revised letter to the customer. It should be accepted by the borrower.
Right, sir.
Just saying that because there is a natural calamity, account cannot slip into NPA is not right. You have to do a restructure. Okay.
Right, sir.
And most important, the account should not be overdue at the time of occurrence of the natural calamity. Not NPA, sir. Should not be overdue itself.
Okay.
So most of the accounts which they would be claiming is covered by that natural calamity would not even be covered by the benefit under this.
Because overdue तो होंगे ही. Overdue अब अपनी उसी में आएगा जिस डेट का repayment due है, same date को overdue आएगा. Even in case of agriculture advances also. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is important for restructuring under natural.
और ये no additional collateral security का क्या है सर?
Sir, ये basically क्या है कि in that case, if it is covered by this circular, then they have given power to the bank. They can, whatever outstanding is there, principal plus interest, it can be converted into a term loan, and then installment can be fixed. कोई additional collateral security you cannot ask. Period of restructuring, they have said if the crop loss is between 33 to 50%, you can give 2 years for repayment of that term loan, including a moratorium of 1 year. If the crop loss is more than 50%, you can give, you can ask for a repayment up to 5 years for that term loans, including moratorium of 1 year.
Right, sir.
These are the benefits, and you can also give additional loans also, and they still would be considered as a standard asset.
Right.
So this is the circular. Now, one more change which has come, which I can mention.
उससे पहले सर एक member ने हमें बता दिया NPA example which you were guidance note वाला. It is on crop loan page 333 to 335, guidance note 2022 for the benefit of member. I mean, we are proactive, and in case of this is again in case of disagreement as above. Should we declare NPA strictly as per guidance note? If we listen to bank and their practical angle, then it means we are relaxing timelines, say by 3 to 6 months as compared to guidance note. Then we are going against guidance note and inviting problems for ourselves. What is the best way out for us?
But the best way is to not to take tension and go as per the guidance.
Yeah.
So see, basically guidance note when it is made, because I was part of it, I can tell you, sir, it is not that I have written it and it gets accepted. So there is a process. There is a complete team of experts which will go through everything. Which I wrote something, it would be vetted by somebody else. Then it would be circulated to all the team members. They would have a right to raise any objection to any part of it. And similarly, somebody has written, I may be vetting it and then getting it circulated to all the members, and then it is given to public. So it comes, you will be aware that it comes in public domain for inviting suggestions and issues. Then if there are any suggestion, it then comes back to the same person who has written it, telling them that these are the suggestions, you give your comments against it. Then whatever comments he gave, then it goes again to the that core group. They look at the comment and decide whether any change is required. So it's a long process and it's a very refined process. So whatever has come as part of the guidance note, it has gone through various levels before it comes out. So you can very well understand what kind of activity it happens. So more or less, I can say that what guidance note would say would be nothing
Brahmvakya.
than the best. Huh?
It's a Brahmvakya.
Yes, bilkul, absolutely. So it is coming from a team of experts which has been specially selected for this purpose. So you can actually plan.
And now members will have this YouTube available to them, this recording. You can always let them see what Lokesh said. So they can, it's in favor of our members. We can always see and explain to the bankers that this is the situation.
Any issues we have, we can discuss because we have a very limited time now. I will rather have a question answer session. Otherwise, we can continue. There are a lot of things which we can discuss. One thing which has also changed this year, please remember, in case of MSME, they have now included retail and wholesale trade in the definition of MSME for the purpose of loans. So that you need to remember there is a specific circular of Reserve Bank on this. So earlier we used to say that the trading activities are not covered within the definition of MSME, which they have now covered. That is important.
The entire year it is covered throughout?
Yes, sir.
So
I can tell you the exact circular if you want. Just give me a second. Any other questions in the meantime we have? I am just going through the.
So members are now open to ask any queries, whatever they may have. They can write into Q&A so that we can, our esteemed speakers can answer. Manmohan ji. So meanwhile, members are maybe writing their queries. If you have to say anything.
कौन सी क्वेरी से शुरू करें सर बताओ?
अभी क्वेरीज लिखेंगे सर, अभी तो गुड इवनिंग चल रही है. एक था रजनीश का, माय क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट एग्जीक्यूशन ऑफ डीपी नोट एंड 2 ROI. क्वेश्चन इनका था, इन केस ऑफ ए केसीसी लिमिट ऑफ 5 lakhs, first 3 lakhs has lower ROI and balance has higher ROI. How to execute documents for limits where there are 2 ROIs? ये तो उनका काम है वैसे. चलो
Sir, this circular where I am saying that trading activity is not included, it came on July 7, 2021. Sir.
तो जुलाई 7 के बाद हम उसमें ले सकते हैं, लेना है हमें. ट्रेडिंग एक्टिविटीज को भी MSME में कवर करना है.
बिल्कुल, absolutely.
Right, sir.
Okay. Now,
members have understood, I think, most of the things. Because there are no queries being asked. एक आई है सर अभी. Please share PPT on email. PPT may not be possible to circulate on the emails. What we'll do, we'll circulate through broadcast list, which I maintain. And if you happen to be not in my broadcast list, means you're not getting regular updates about the webinars, then please note down my number. This is my number, and WhatsApp me stating that please update your name in the broadcast list. I'll do that, and this recording will be sent to all the members throughout my broadcast list, whether you are attending or not. And my number is 98, either likha hai 9868163526. Please,
there's
sir.
one question which has come from Vinod Kumar Garji. Sir, what do you do if bank renew the limit without taking any document like balance sheet, TSC return, etc.?
Yeah.
Sir, this is
Valid
one
question.
critical issue which arises every time. One, I will ask you to refer to a RBI circular which came on August 21, 2020 last year. And it was specifically on this point itself. Now, what is the norms as per me? I'll explain to you, sir. So suppose there is an account which is due for renewal on 30th June 2021. So the renewal process has to start before the expiry of this 30th June. So that by the time 30th June arrives, the renewal should have been completed and the account should continue as per the whatever renewal has been done. Now what happens is for some reason the bank is not able to do the renewal. It may be that the documents were not provided by the customer or the bank was not able to complete the process. Okay. So what would happen on 1st July, the limit would become 0 and the complete overdue would become the complete amount which is there, outstanding amount would become overdue. So this is something which is very harsh to the customer. So they allow that you can continue the account for another 6 months. And in the next 6 months, you should be able to basically renew the limit with the documents. So what we say then is that they can review the account for 6 months without taking the complete document, a short-term review based upon the operations in the account. Okay. Now this become a area of misuse by the banks. They allow the review of the limit for continuously 1 year or 2 years or even 3 years for that matter. This is not what is expected. This is not which is acceptable to us as an auditor. So maximum of 6 months, the limit can continue without doing a proper renewal. If the renewal has still not been done, then the account is likely to slip into NPA category. Okay, so this is important, and you
So
refer
why
to
you
that.
said likely to slip?
So you will have to see, because again the RBI circular gives you a option that due to any, if the bank is able to show you evidence that the customer has provided all the documents and they are in the process of renewing the limit and the renewal would happen in a very short period of time, you have an option to take that into account while classifying the account as an account.
And what is a short period of time is?
It is not defined, sir. So you'll have to take your call based upon whether all the documents have been submitted and at what position the account renewal is in. So if it is you can see that the account is otherwise running regular, the renewal would happen and the renewal happen. It is not due to any fault of the customer. It is due to the bank has not completed the processing, and maybe the bank requires another 15 days or a month for completing the processing. You can take a call, sir. But beyond that, it is something which is not accepted.
Right. And this, what you said, 6 months is actually 3 months twice.
3 months twice, yeah.
And those 3 months twice cannot overrule 6 months.
Of course.
Means suppose 30th June is the due date for renewal the account. 6 months comes to 31st December. First review cannot be done on 30th December. If at all it is to be done on 30th December, it will end at 31st of December only. For
then
one
the
day.
account would have already slipped into NPA. The reason is because if there was no review of the account, on 1st July, the limit should have become 0. The account would have become overdue for payment. And if that position continues for 90 days, the account would in any case have slipped into NPA.
Yes,
So
sir.
it is only through review of the account, they continue that limit, and that continuation cannot go beyond 186 months. Okay, I think that would answer the question. Any other issues which we might have?
इसमें सबसे बड़ा कंफ्यूजन रहता है सर, वो आपने सही बताया 3 महीने के बाद वो एक्चुअली तो एनपीए हो जाना चाहिए क्योंकि रिन्यू नहीं किया, पर बैंकर्स करते क्या है वो दे टेक टाइम. जैसे मैंने बोला कि बड़ा एक्सट्रीम स्टेप मैंने लेके बोला है कि 31 दिसंबर अगर वो 6 मंथ्स कंप्लीट होने हैं तो 30 दिसंबर को रिव्यू कर देंगे, कहना जी 3 महीने के लिए हमने अभी तो पहली ऑप्शन एक्सरसाइज किया है 3 महीने की रिव्यू, अभी तो हमारे पास 3 महीने के एक और ऑप्शन अवेलेबल है. सो दैट इज नॉट द सिनेरियो. वो 6 मंथ्स के अंदर ही खत्म होनी है. अगर आपने 2 महीने के बाद फर्स्ट रिव्यू किया है तो दूसरा रिव्यू आपका 1 महीने का हो सकता है, इससे ज्यादा नहीं हो सकता. राइट. सो मेंबर्स ने कुछ और क्वेरी है. We should declare it NPA with effect from renewal date if documents are renewal kept without borrower signatures and it continues like that for over 6 months, and also reverse unrealized interest. रजनीश जी का क्वेश्चन है. मुझे जो समझ आया वो कह रहे हैं कि अगर वो 6 महीने से ज्यादा बिना बोरोअर के सिग्नेचर्स के पेंडिंग पड़े हैं रिन्यूअल के डॉक्यूमेंट्स, तो हमें जिस डेट को ड्यू था उसी डेट को एनपीए कर देना चाहिए, ऐसा मुझे लगता है, आई डोंट नो।
Sir, actually renewal के time पे ना generally unless until there is a change in limit, you have enhanced the limit or you have decreased the limit, so there is a change in terms and condition, that the only what we expect from the customer is कि भाई वो एक renewal letter पे sign करके दे दे कि he is accepting the renewal. Per se, no other document per se is required. See, that is first thing which we need to keep in mind. So in your case, what you are telling is the documents are not signed. It is either a case where there is an enhancement or reduction in the limit, which requires a revised set of documents to be signed.
सर बैलेंस शीट्स नहीं चाहिए, लेटेस्ट फाइनेंशियल्स?
Sir, वो तो review process का part है. Once the review has been done, मतलब you have decided to continue the limit for मतलब whatever terms and condition, then documentation कुछ नहीं होता per se. If the limit has been continued with the same terms and condition, so you don't get an agreement signed, you don't get a revised मतलब terms and condition or a promissory note signed. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
So meaning thereby is what you want to say is 30th June is a due date. Before 30th June, the process should start. If it is not started, bank borrower should give a letter that kindly keep this limit continued for maybe 6 months or 3 months, whatever. And bankers, without obtaining the review process, means financials for 3 months first and then 3 months again. And by 6 months, borrower should have submitted the financials, including income tax return and all. And process at the bank should be completed by 31st December and renewed. Otherwise, it will become NPA as on 31st December.
Absolutely.
Right,
सतीश जी,
Yes, sir.
ऐसा भी बिल्कुल नहीं है कि कुछ भी डॉक्यूमेंट लेने ही नहीं है रिन्यूअल के लिए या रिव्यू के लिए. They may not be audited, they may not be fully certified by the borrower, but definitely there has to be some documents. केवल एंड केवल एक ऑपरेशंस ऑफ द अकाउंट के बेस पे सारी की सारी लिमिट्स जरूरी नहीं है कि रिव्यू की जा सके. देयर आर सर्टेन लिमिट्स जिसमें यूजुअली ट्रांजैक्शंस के अलावा और कोई इंफॉर्मेशन कभी भी बैंकर के पास ड्यूरिंग द ईयर कभी पास ऑन यूजुअली नहीं होती.
नहीं सर, मेरा ना मनमोहन जी, मैं लेट मी क्लैरिफाई इफ देयर इज एनी कंफ्यूजन. आई नेवर सेड कि डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं लेने हैं. डॉक्यूमेंट मैं किसको रेफर कर रहा हूँ?
हाँ,
कि जो बाद में हम डॉक्यूमेंटेशन एग्जीक्यूट करते हैं उसकी बात कर रहा हूँ.
हाँ, नहीं,
रिन्यूअल के लिए मुझे फाइनेंशियल्स तो लेने ही लेने. अगर फाइनेंशियल्स के बिना मैं रिन्यूअल कर रहा हूँ तो वो रिन्यूअल है ही नहीं, वो तो रिव्यू ही है फिर.
नहीं, मैं आपके उस पे नहीं कह रहा हूँ. मैं कह रहा हूँ कहीं कोई जो कम्युनिकेशन हुआ लास्ट 5 मिनट्स में, बोरोवर से भी जब आप एक एप्लीकेशन लेते हैं उसके साथ में भी वो अपने प्रीवियस ईयर के कुछ ना कुछ सब्सटेंटिव डॉक्यूमेंट उसको देने चाहिए, जिसके बेस पे उसको रिन्यूअल एप्लीकेशन के साथ में, जिसके बेस पे उसको रिन्यूअल और रिव्यू करना चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक सिंपल एक पेज की मुझे एक रिन्यू कर दीजिए, मुझे रिव्यू कर दीजिए. मेरे ख्याल से, और उसको वो बार बार करे जाए 2 साल, तब भी वो मेरे ख्याल से एक प्रॉपर रिव्यू और रिन्यूअल नहीं कहलाएगा. एग्रीमेंट्स तो डेफिनेटली जो लोकेश जी ने कहा, जब तक चेंज इन टर्म्स नहीं है तब तक एग्रीमेंट के डॉक्यूमेंट्स और वो सब चीजों को दोबारा से री एग्जीक्यूट करने की जरूरत तो नहीं होती है.
यस सर, प्रैक्टिकल सिनेरियो ये है, बोरोवर से कुछ भी नहीं लेते और ब्रांच सिर्फ एक लाइन का एक लेटर लिखती है, बेस्ड ऑन द ट्रांजैक्शंस, satisfactory transactions in the account, the accounts is reviewed for 3 months or 6 months, whatever. उसमें borrower की कहीं लिस्ट वो भी नहीं होता.
रीजन समझेंगे ना सर, एक सबसे बेसिक बात को आप समझिएगा कि RBI अंडरस्टैंड्स द बेसिक इश्यूज इन बैंकिंग. उन्होंने क्यों ये चीज रखी है यहाँ पे सर? वो इसलिए रखी है, उनको पता है अगर 6 महीने के अंदर भी रिन्यूअल नहीं हो रहा ना सर, तो देयर इज सम प्रॉब्लम इन द अकाउंट, which for that reason either the customer is not providing the documents, because उसको पता है मेरा अकाउंट नहीं चल सकता, या the bank has got the document, they know the account cannot run at this point of time at the same level, और अगर उसका वो लिमिट को रिड्यूस करते हैं तो अकाउंट एनपीए में स्लिप कर देगा. तो वो क्या करते हैं, कस्टमर को इन्फॉर्म कर देते हैं अनऑफिशियली कि भैया आपकी लिमिट हमने विड्रॉ कर दी है, अब आप इसको इतने तक लेके आओ, इतना क्रेडिट दे दो अकाउंट को, और ऑफिशियली कुछ नहीं करते ऑन पेपर. तो दैट इज द रीजन, उन्होंने वो भी समझते हैं इस बात को, इसलिए उन्होंने ये चीज को लेके आए हैं कि कहीं ना कहीं आपको ये चीज को समझना है कि if the renewal is not happening for 6 months, तो कहीं ना कहीं there is some other problem in the account. The problem is not submission of document or non renewal. The problem is somewhere else.
Yes.
इसकी वजह से अकाउंट स्लिप करने की जरूरत है, जो आपको नहीं दिखा रहे वो कहीं ना कहीं प्रॉब्लम उनको दिख रही है उसके अंदर। और ऐसा होता है सर, कई बार हम देखते हैं कि उसके फाइनेंशियल सबमिटेड होते हैं, फाइनेंशियल के अंदर सेल चल रही है 1 करोड़ रुपए और उसकी लिमिट चल रही है 80 लाख रुपए। हम उसको कहते हैं भाई 1 करोड़ की सेल पे 80 लाख की लिमिट कैसे चल रही है? आइदर देयर इज अ मिसयूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ फंड, क्योंकि उसकी वर्किंग कैपिटल नीड हो ही नहीं सकती 80 लाख की 1 करोड़ की सेल पे। तो या तो उसने डाइवर्जन कर लिया फंड का, या उसको लॉसेज है जिसकी वजह से उसके पास फंड नहीं बचा, जो वो डिस्क्लोज नहीं कर रहा आपको। तो वी हैव बीन इन दोस केसेस टेकिंग अ वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट स्टैंड, और हम कह रहे हैं कि भाई साहब वी कैन नॉट अलाउ दिस प्रोसेस टू कंटिन्यू एंड वी हैव बीन मेकिंग दो मार्किंग दोस अकाउंट्स एज एनपीएस
even before 6 months of due date.
हाँ, अगर हमें लगता है कि ये अकाउंट इज शोइंग इनहेरेंट वीकनेस, और हमें लगता है कि ये द इनहेरेंट वीकनेस इज सो ग्रेट that the recovery itself is being questioned now, then we have the right to take any appropriate actions.
And also, sir, now sitting on April 22, and as the last date for income tax return and audit was extended substantially by last year, so balance sheets would not be made available by the borrower to the bankers. Then what is the stand, sir?
सर आई थिंक सर आपको देखिए, कोई भी आप ऑडिट करते हैं, कुछ भी करते हैं, तो आपको एक प्रैक्टिकल व्यू तो लेके चलना ही चलना है। Now COVID was a very difficult situation for a lot of cases.
Yes, yes.
No, but it does not mean कि भाई मेरी इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइलिंग की डेट बढ़ गई तो मैं फाइनेंशियल्स ही नहीं दे सकता। फाइनेंशियल्स तो मैं सबमिट कर सकता हूँ, हो सकता है वो ऑडिटेड ना हो एट द मोस्ट, पर अनऑडिटेड हो सकते हैं, प्रोविजनल हो सकते हैं। तो द रिन्यूअल प्रोसेस कैन नॉट बी केप्ट हैंगिंग फॉर अ इनडेफिनेट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम। तो आप, मैंने इसलिए आपको कहा सर, कहीं पे आपको दे आर एबल टू सेटिस्फाई कि जी भाई ऑपरेशन ऑफ द अकाउंट इज गुड, द कस्टमर इज गुड, द फाइनेंशियल जो उसने सबमिट किया हो सकता है ऑडिटेड ना हो, बट अदरवाइज इट सीम्स टू बी अ वैलिड केस, जीएसटी रिटर्न से आपको सेल्स दिख रही है, आप वेरीफाई कर रहे हैं, तो यू कैन ऑलवेज टेक अ कॉल इन दीज केसेस, क्योंकि कभी भी आप इम्प्रैक्टिकल होकर ऑडिट नहीं कर सकते, बट यू नीड टू हैव सम वेरी वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग एविडेंसेस टू कीप इन योर रिकॉर्ड। मेन प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है सर, कल को आरबीआई ने ऑडिट किया और आपसे क्वेश्चन कर दिया कि भाई साहब आप एक्सप्लेन करो अपना कंडक्ट, तो यू शुड बी एबल टू शो बेस्ड अपॉन डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कि भाई आपने जो भी कॉल लिया वो विद इन द फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ आरबीआई गाइडलाइंस एंड बेस्ड अपॉन सर्टेन डॉक्यूमेंट्स वो लिया, ठीक है ना। तो आरबीआई भी कहता है कोई टेम्परेरी डेफिशिएंसीज हैं ड्यू टू नॉन रिन्यूअल ऑफ लिमिट एक्सेट्रा, तो द ऑडिटर हैज इज इन अ पोजीशन टू टेक अ कॉल, वो इम्पोर्टेंट है मुझे दिमाग।
शिवानी भारद्वाज जी का क्वेश्चन है, शुड बैंक चार्ज पेनल इंटरेस्ट ड्यूरिंग दिस 6 months रिव्यू पीरियड?
सर अगर रिव्यू कर रखा है तो नहीं होगा, अगर रिव्यू नहीं कर रखा तो ऑफ कोर्स पेनल इंटरेस्ट होती है, व्हिच वुड बी अकाउंट।
इसमें लोकेश जी एक बड़ा इशू आता है,
हाँ जी सर।
समटाइम्स लैक ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की वजह से बोरोवर ने डॉक्यूमेंट सबमिट किए हुए हैं बट बैंकर ने रिन्यू नहीं किया, और ऐसे केसेस में भी वी हैव सीन कि पेनल इंटरेस्ट चार्ज हुआ है। व्हाट शैल बी द कॉल इन दिस केसेस, एंड व्हाट शैल बी द कॉल इन दीज केसेस फॉर मेकिंग देम एनपी और नॉट एनपी?
So then again we'll come to the same issue जो अभी हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे
जी।
if you are the bank is able to prove, देखिए ultimately it is the duty of the bank to bring out evidence in support of the issue कि भाई the customer is not at fault, और हम भी बिल्कुल तैयार है, कस्टमर की अदरवाइज सारी पोजीशन ओके है, फाइनेंशियल्स भी ओके है, और हम सेम लेवल पर रिव्यू करने की पोजीशन में है, एंड फॉर एक्स वाई जेड रीजन हम नहीं कर पाए, तो दे कैन यू कैन टेक अ कॉल सर, पर वो एविडेंस तो ब्रांच लेके आए ना, और वो एविडेंस आप रिकॉर्ड करें, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन जो हमने आपने भी बात की, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन बिकम्स इम्पोर्टेंट। आई हैव सीन केसेस सर जहाँ पे लोग हमारे पास आए कि आरबीआई ने नोटिस दे दिया कि आपने अकाउंट एनपी होना चाहिए था, क्यों नहीं करा, शो कोर्स नोटिस दे दिया, तो उस टाइम पे प्रॉब्लम क्या आती है, हमारे पास डॉक्यूमेंटेशन प्रॉपर नहीं होती, वो एविडेंसेस नहीं होते, तो वो आप क्रिएट करिए, उसके बेसिस पे अगर आप सेटिस्फाइड है तो आप कॉल लीजिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, तो वो एविडेंस को दिखाएं।
मनमोहन जी ने क्वेश्चन किया कि वो रिन्यू नहीं हुआ, उन्होंने बोरोवर सारे डॉक्यूमेंट दे रखे हैं, और लेकिन उस अकाउंट में पिनल इंटरेस्ट लग रहा है। पिनल इंटरेस्ट लग रहा है का मतलब है कि बोरोवर ने डॉक्यूमेंट टाइमली तो नहीं दिए थे, एज ऑन 31 मार्च उन्होंने दे दिए, और अब बैंक कहता है जी इन्होंने 6 महीने से दे रखे हैं हमें और हम ही नहीं कर पाए, पर फिर पिनल इंटरेस्ट क्यों लगाया था, और बैंक का उसका बोरोर का कोई लेटर भी नहीं है कि पिनल इंटरेस्ट क्यों लगाया था। एक ये, दूसरा एक और चीज मैं साथ साथ मतलब इन्फॉर्म भी कर रहा हूँ और पूछना चाहता हूँ इसमें क्या व्यू रहेगा। जब हम किसी अकाउंट को इन सम किसी भी बेसिस पर, सैंक्शन के बेसिस पर, रिन्यूअल के बेसिस पर एनपी डिक्लेयर करने के लिए पिक करते हैं, और वो अकाउंट जो उसका जो सैंक्शनिंग अथॉरिटी है वो हायर अथॉरिटी है, नॉट द ब्रांच, तो उस केस में वो क्या करते हैं, बैक डेटेड में एक लेटर सिंपल आ जाता है रीजनल ऑफिस से या जोनल ऑफिस से, अभी मंगा देते हैं जी, फोन करते हैं वो सर वो ऐसे ऐसे एनपी हो रहा है और इसका वो सैंक्शन लेटर चाहिए, तो वहां से रीजनल या जो भी सैंक्शनिंग अथॉरिटी है वो सिंपल प्लेन आ जाता है जी, रिन्यूड सैंक्शन करके, एक लाइनर, 2 लाइनर या 1 पेजर मैक्सिमम। वो भी फेक होता है, वो सिर्फ हमें दिखाने के लिए आता है, उसका कहीं कोई रिकॉर्ड नहीं होता। आई नॉर्मली आस्क कि ठीक है जी, अगर आपने वहां से सैंक्शन मंगाया है कोई बात नहीं, आप मुझे प्रोसेस नोट भी मंगा दो, आपने क्या प्रोसेस नोट भेजा, आपने क्या उसको रिकमेंडेशन भेजी, वो मुझे दिखा दो, लेट मी सी दैट, और फिर वहां से जो प्रोसेस नोट की कॉपी मंगा लो, उन्होंने कहाँ कहाँ नोटिंग होती है डिफरेंट डिफरेंट हायरार्की पर प्रोसेस नोट की, अगर वो है then I'll accept this sanction note, otherwise just one plain paper, one paper saying that this account renewed or sanctioned on 31st March or 30th March, I do not accept it. What is your call, sir?
You are right, sir, but वही अगेन बात है कि एविडेंस की, जैसे आपने एक एविडेंस क्रिएट किया बेस्ड अपॉन दी प्रोसेस नोट, आपको एविडेंस क्रिएट करना, नाउ दे आर शोइंग अ डॉक्यूमेंट claiming that document is not a factual document, it is a fake document, requires you to do something more. Just claiming it would not help. So as you said, you have to ask for a process note just to understand the process, what has happened. तो वो आप एडिशनल एविडेंस क्रिएट करें, उसके बेसिस पे अगर आप कुछ करेंगे तो बिल्कुल आप जस्टिफाइड है, पर अगर आप सिर्फ क्लेम करेंगे विदाउट क्रिएटिंग दैट एडिशनल एविडेंस, सो देन यू विल बी नस, क्योंकि मतलब उस केस में देन दे वुड चैलेंज योर जजमेंट ऑन दिस इशू।
बट सर अब इसमें हाउ टू क्रिएट आर डॉक्यूमेंट, हम तो क्योंकि वो फोन जब उस समय डिस्कशन हो रहा है, सपोज सिटिंग ऑन 10th of April, हमने पिक कर रखा है भाई ये क्योंकि रिन्यू नहीं हुआ, अब वो डिस्कशन होते होते नहीं सर वो हमारे उन्होंने तो कर ही रखा है, नहीं करा तो अभी करा देते हैं सर, बैक डेटेड लेटर आ जाएगा सर, उसमें क्या है सर, अल्टीमेटली वो 30th मार्च का या 31st मार्च का या 25 मार्च का एक लेटर आ जाता है, लो जी रिन्यूड सर, क्योंकि वो हम जो भी कुछ कर रहे होते हैं उसकी साइड बाय साइड रिपोर्टिंग, बिल्कुल पैरेलल रिपोर्टिंग उनके रीजनल ऑफिस को और जोनल ऑफिस को चल रही होती है हर पॉइंट पे, और वो वहां से सपोर्ट मिलती है और वो लेटर आ जाता है। अब जो थोड़े से हमारे वीक नहीं कहना चाहिए, मतलब थोड़ा सा जो इजीली मान जाने वाले मेंबर्स हमारे हैं, वो कहते हैं अच्छा चलो यार आ गया सैंक्शन लेटर, ठीक है लेट अस ड्रॉप इट, पर वो एक्चुअली अगर आप बाद में देखें तो वो लेटर सिर्फ हमारे को दिखाने के लिए उस मोमेंट पे आया था, सो दैट दिस अकाउंट इज नॉट डिक्लेयर्ड एज एनपीए एज ऑफ नाउ, बात की बाद में देखेंगे, और वो लेटर वहां से बाद में हट जाता है, और वो एक्चुअल उसका जो भी टाइम 2 महीने 3 महीने 4 महीने लगने हैं वो लग के ही रिन्यू होता है या नहीं होता है, जो भी सिचुएशन है। तो
सतीश
उस
जी,
सिचुएशन की बात
इसमें मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि ऐसे केसेस में देखिए, सपोज कीजिए प्रोसेस नोट वो आपको ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम फर्निश नहीं कर पाया,
हाँ जी,
लेकिन इवन आफ्टर नॉट बीन फर्निशिंग द प्रोसेस नोट, ये कहना कि आई विल नॉट रिलाई अपॉन दैट डॉक्यूमेंट विच हैज कम फ्रॉम द जेडो और आरओ, ये बहुत डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा किसी
सर
भी
वो
ऑडिटर के लिए।
इसलिए है क्योंकि वो हमारे डिस्कशन करते करते सर अभी मंगा देते हैं ना,
कोई बात नहीं, बट फिर भी वो एक
हाँ जी,
डॉक्यूमेंट आया है।
हाँ जी,
यूजुअली ऐसे केस में क्या करना चाहिए, एक रिटर्न मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन, एक क्वेरी रेज करके उसके ऊपर ब्रांच मैनेजर से एक रिटर्न मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन ले लिया जाए विद रेफरेंस टू द रेफरेंस नंबर ऑफ दैट लेटर एंड ऑल, कि हाँ भाई ये हम फर्निश कर रहे हैं आपको। सो उससे क्या होगा कि कल को वो लेटर बीच में से फाइल में से निकलता भी है, सो फार एज योर डॉक्यूमेंटेशन इज कंप्लीट, कि हाँ इस तरीके का एक क्लैरिफिकेशन, एक कंफर्मेशन जेडो से आरओ से आया था कि द अकाउंट हैज बीन रिन्यूड और रिव्यूड, और आपके पास उसका मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन करके है, उसमें उसका कोर्ट, उसका रेफरेंस नंबर, डेट वगैरह, एंड हु हैज साइंड दैट डॉक्यूमेंट, वो भी सारी डिटेल है। मैं समझता हूँ दैट वुड बी द
सबसे पहले ब्रांच की जिम्मेदारी है कि वो प्रोसेस नोट बना के भेजे, उसने ही भेजा नहीं अभी तक एक्चुअली।
वो ठीक है, मैं आपकी बात को डिनाई नहीं कर रहा हूँ, प्रोसेस नोट तो आ जाए तो बहुत ही बढ़िया, अगर प्रोसेस नोट आपके नॉलेज में और आपके सामने आ जाए फिर तो उससे नथिंग लाइक दैट, और अगर प्रोसेस नोट नहीं आ पाता है या नहीं फर्निश होता है, even then claiming any document in a official system to be fake may land you somewhere in soup. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thanks for nice updation. Any other query, members? What is this? Any renewal out of system should not be
Rajni ji
accepted
has a
unless-
point that a lot of cases now there is a software which is being used for this process of renewal and reviews, and that process, if you are aware of a process which your bank is following for that renewal and reviews, then you can actually go through that process, that system itself, software itself, for the purpose of verifying the accuracy or authenticity of those documents.
Right.
So that is happening in certain cases. Certain banks are actually doing. In private banks, I have seen, because I have done audit of these loan processing centers itself. So I have seen these kind of activities, but that may not be applicable in each case. But in case, of course, so Rajni ji has a suggestion here. In case your bank is doing it, you can always refer to it for the purpose of verification.
Right, sir. So it is 8 to 10. We are almost covered everything, and time is also passed, and members are also leaving as well as having no query. So it's time to close the session, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Thank you so much for the patient hearing of all the members. And thank you so much for inviting me, Satish ji, for allowing me to share my views with your members.
And
Thank you very much, Satish ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was really a wonderful session, Lokesh ji and Manmohan ji. We have had many fruitful and many wonderful suggestions along with the updations. And surprisingly, we had almost 250 members attending the session. And I knew that few of the members are attending from the branches which they have reached for auditing. They have personally called me, sir, आपने आज रखा है, and we have already in the branch. So I just suggested them to stay in the branch and attend it, or leave the branch early, go to the hotel and attend it. And they have confirmed that we are attending from the branch. They've given me WhatsApps, or from the hotel we are attending. So it was a very really wonderful and knowledgeable session and requirement of the day. Thank you very much, Lokesh ji, Manmohan ji, and all the members who attended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.